The Code to the Matrix, First Edition, The Golden Rule, by James Evans Bomar III, or Jeb Cubed. 1080 Arc Chariot, Observer of Spheres Prime Mobile. To all the youth of the world, so that you may see the path to ascension. Forward, forward, forward. The race was not given to the quick or the swift, but to the one who could endure till the end. Then we found out there was no end. The unwary soul who fails to grapple with the mocking demon of illusion will return to the earth as a slave of illusion. To become a true master of fate, you must first become a knower of self. In a time much too distant to consider, we as humans, splitting from a single source, entered duality. Spiraling away from the Creator, some spun in the direction of 6, while others spun in the opposite direction of 9. This is the spiral force. These two forms contain complete opposites. However, it is in their union something new can be born. This is the sequence of life. Our solar system houses various binary or dual worlds, and Earth, called first Tiamat, is one of them. Once entering this realm, the spirit began to develop its very narrow definition of things. As in most cases, besides twins, they are lacking their other side. In instinct, we create a stand-in, which we call the ego. The ego is wholly constructed of astral energy in which we create and breathe life into every day. At times, not knowing power, we birth a monster which we love and care for, since, after all, it is a part of us, our baby. At some point in incantations or loops, one realizes that they must begin the quest of taming the monster. They realize they must flip it over and ride it. At that moment, they also see how strong it has become, and it is stuck in its ways, rigid in form, brutish, and ineloquent. In that condition, we can take it nowhere, just as you never take a street dog into a royal party. The work before us then was to take this rough-cut stone and form it into a chariot of fire that could propel us through the center of the universe. It is there we will meet our other half. In this realm, that is the meaning to life. To help us through this whole process, in all of its components, the Most High developed a system based on the strategies of the entire universe. Seeing that humans are smaller composites of the celestial spheres, it became possible for one to know how to guide their particular life in the direction that would equal the greatest amount of potential for their unique design. In each person lies the pearl of the highest potential. If developed, it is the treasure to all existence, visible and invisible. This wondrous metamorphosis was possible of the human creation. However, as you can see in some parts of nature, not every creation has been given this ability. Thus, there arose a challenge from lower forms of consciousness that manifested as jealousy, and thus spirituality and religion were created. These were the limits. Once again, at the close of this time segment, the masses will have an opportunity to discover their true form, which is not a word and comes before even thought. It is the highest, if you but knew. Reason 1. The entire universes are known to be binary. This gives the possibility of balance and diverse continuation. The figure 8, which is the sign for infinity, is actually the sign of two worlds that we continue to reincarnate through, one after another, in an infinite loop we call stasis. Our own parallel actually exists in this other world simultaneously until it is merged with. It also remains just as clueless as you are right now to its existence. Consider hot, cold, light, and dark. Is there not warm and gray which would easily fit between the two? Not to mention in temperature, there is hot, cold, warm, vapor, freezing, and many more stages, each having a particular use. Some being very beneficial for a certain moment and useless for others. If someone came to your door looking for a person that you loved to do them harm, would you tell them that they were inside, or would you lie and say they're not around? If you lied to protect that person, is that good or bad? If you ask a pastor of a church, they will say that it's evil to tell lies, period. But is it better to allow the loved one to be hurt? As you see, everything is a matter of perspective. So there can be no good and bad, only reason, and reason has many parameters. If all things are not considered, a person could be left confused, not knowing the decision to make from time to time. Thus, they are left lost in time. Whatever you do in life, let it be endowed with meaning and purpose. The world is lodged in the phase of opposites right now. Thus we face wars, racism, and an extinction of our natural life. What I'm presenting here is the information of the inner workings of the world along its creeds, cultures, and religions that have shaped our minds and actions since antiquity, extending several incarnations. We will see how ideas grow over time and sometimes lose their true meaning altogether. In this, we will see also how we've been taken off track. This due in part by the controllers, knowing if you take humans from their original cycle, they are easy to confuse and enslave. Let us not forget, we faced many conquerors in the past, intending to usurp the order of the world and bring it under their sway. This they accomplished, and it should not be forgotten no matter how much the illusion tells you it does not exist. The foolish think of me, the unmanifest, as having manifestation, knowing not my higher, immutable, and most excellent form. Fools regard me as clad in human shape, not knowing flesh cannot withstand me. They have empty hopes, vain actions, of vain knowledge, and, senseless, they verily are possessed of deceitful nature, and become undivine beings. I hurl these evildoers into the womb of distortion, deluded birth after birth, not attaining me as they fall into a condition even lower, without the slightest suspension proving that they are not using the reason and senses we gave them, the Most High. There exist certain systems, mainly language and religion, that perpetuate this fallacy of illusion in a subliminal way. If you happen to be aligned with any of the religions or ideas being discussed, do be careful not to think of it as bad if you happen to hear something that makes you uneasy. After all, many of us at one time or another in this life or in past lives have avowed ourselves to something only later find out we had outgrown it because we now possess an entirely different set of key knowledge. Every time we learn something new that is the truth, we celebrate. We are closer to home. The others. This world we are in is fully animate. It has been constructed by an ability so powerful it has missed no details. Challenge in life equals substantial growth. It is, after all, the constant lifting of heavier weights that makes a person strong. Those weights we must lift are actually other life forms that are very dense, slow-moving vibrations. Those weights, when attached to us, make us wait right here on Earth, burdened down and unable to fly. Those of us who are divine positive are attracted to the light, and thus we must get light by releasing the weight. But wait! The complexity of the Creator exists within its creation, and there are many of us. On third density, we all appear to be about the same. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, etc. Although if you had the ability to see individuals' astral form, no 2 forms would look the same. Some you would see as infused with animal natures, extraterrestrial life, unknown elements and essences, and everything else that they had accumulated in the past existences, all comprised in one auric field. When that field is placed on a humanoid body, the outer shell looks similar enough to allow you to get along in society. We are all something much more different than what is seen in the mirror, so we must never be confused that the reflection is the complete you. On other dimensions, there are so many life forms they cannot be cataloged. It would be much more difficult than listing every type of insect, plant, fish, mammal, each exist on such a small planet as Earth. On their dimension, they have a spirit form. The breathe flows through all living creatures. When they take physical form, as we have, They combine with what is most like their character. The ancient knowledge was to know how they appeared in the seen world, how to communicate with them, and which ones to avoid. Many of these beings had no concern for the humanoids whatsoever themselves, being either much too dense to comprehend human life or much too developed to waste thought on something so distant and primitive. There are beings who, in fact, are closer to us in proximity of creation and also endowed with reason. They possessed a fiery and airy nature and known now as serpents. Mankind's history with the serpents is undeniable. For example, in Colombian mythology, Bashu, the primordial woman, was called Serpiente Celestial, or celestial snake. Mesoamerican cultures worship Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, as they await his return, just as Christians wait for Jesus. The Egyptians called them Netiru and said that they come from heavenly boats and set up priesthoods whose priests were called Jedi. Sound familiar? The Sumerians claimed their ancestors were reptilian Anunnaki who genetically modified them to be slaves. It is of value to keep in mind the Sumerians say that they were hybridized and made as slaves, while other legends simply say they were intermingled with their population. In Ethiopia, stories and ancient statues can be found of the serpents known as Naga. These Naga also went to Persia and China. Nagasaki was named after the serpents who migrated there. In Japan, the dragon Yasha is a protector of Buddhism. The Celts made mention of Druid adders, or great serpents that came to instruct them in mystical arts. The Hebrews speak of the serpent, Nagash, who was ever giving them trouble and misguiding their people. The Arabs produced thousands of codex warning of the serpent Shaitan and his cunning ways of making man and women fall short. It is safe to say that we can identify at least one non-humanoid being that is in fact interfaced with our life cycle. And this is only one, but there are many more. Thus, we should be able to establish that we are not alone. Reason 2. The Maya clearly show they had already pledged allegiance to a group of masculine serpents. The serpent races are just as vast as our own. Many of the serpents are on a collective mind, thus they are really out to accomplish their own agenda and stop at nothing to see it through. Humans are looked at as a source to most of them. They are supremacist warrior class. Also, some have mated with the human race, trying to protect their hybrids as extended family. Many of the ancient reptilians despised this union, and thus a war has ensued amongst the elders and the siblings. Reason 3. In the Egyptian glyphs, it clearly shows much larger humanoids inhabited the land. They are the Nephilim, bent on world domination and enslaving what they called inferior humans. They exist now in spirit form. This is beyond Alexander the Great and Constantine. In fact, this is where they drew their power and destiny from. They were just human catalysts. Hybrids themselves, although their legends are so shrouded in myth, it does them little credit to the truth of their origin. Alexander was known as the Great Two-Horn, and by the Arabs, Dul Qarnayn, who built the wall. The correct knowledge actually makes your spirit larger. Knowledge is food for the spirit. When this happens, just like fish has gotten too big for its tank, you must move on. This is no different than having a small bike as a child that takes you everywhere you need to go, as your child range is a lot smaller. When you get older, you may need a car, plane, or even a ship depending on where you're intending to travel. The body itself, when developed, is the vehicle to traverse the cosmos, and it must now be prepared to do such a thing. This is a vastly populated territory we speak of, and it contains the experiences you will need to continue growth. We will discover that all the things we have gone through in life have served us to get to that point. It is only of value to realize that since nothing is absolutely still, you must continue to move. This is the nature of our entire universe. Nothing dies. Even if you blow it up, it will still become an infinite amount of pieces, whatever it was before. It is a wondrous age we have entered as we watch the myths of the illusion dissipate. The hot spiral of reality permeates the globe. We are awakening as children of giants from a long slumber, realizing that we have been living a long dream. As a planet, we have seen many ages that are part of a large growth cycle. This is the process of turning dirt into gold. One thing we can be sure of, since man and woman have triumphed through the Stone Age and now meet the end of the Space Age, we most certainly intend to continue on to what is next. Reason 4. From the Stone Age to the Space Age was made to look so easy a caveman could do it. Have you asked yourself where our world is headed next? What do you think organizations like NASA, Lucent, and Sony are really doing with now trillions of dollars? Like a game of chess, you anticipate the player's next move. So we see that it is the age of ether we are arriving into, or simply put, spirit. Now we can begin to do things that only made up the fiction portion of our previous ideas and imagination. The weight of the body, which is now the cube, will be shed and will be open once more to higher senses. We would do well to develop and train these senses now. As we speed up and things take place, it will not be time to practice. There's no doubt that we will experience a new aeon. We are all adepts of motion, alkalites of the flux. We populate the galaxy and thus have solidified our wave through the harmonic cosmos. We are vessels of known and unknown energies, untold, being ourselves converters for multiple life forms to assimilate, now not only on Earth, but also in space, as above, so below. This energy field cannot be seen with the untrained eye, but exists all around you as a standing column wave. With the science of sound, which is vibration, we can venture to know that if a large wave is made by anything in a small pool, it will only make the smallest waves speed up and increase in size. Thus the small are supported by the great and coaxed to become bigger. Since these bigger forces are now sending out stronger waves than ever, our choice is that we face that bigger wave. Can we ride it, or will we wipe out and hope to catch another? We can be sure that we cannot be destroyed because the soul within us, a gift by the Most High, is immortal and without end. But you can be made to forget, which is called the second death. When a person really assimilates the other sentient things in existence, it opens them up to a better understanding of the Most High through diversity. This also allows us to make a sober estimate of ourselves and where we personally stand in the levels of matter. When one remains insolent to a fact of such magnitude, there are sure to be repercussions. Those repercussions cause a supremacist nature, never considering what we think is the top is actually the bottom for another being. We would assume we are on an elevated level, which really does more damage than good, since the subconscious mind factors in that we are poisoning the same air we breathe. So as the most intelligent, we are really the most ignorant. Anything built on that kind of foundation will go through a succession of destruction and chaos. Now we have the Earth's full historical description. When this changes, which it will very soon, everything will be different. Fast. My first experience with the others was when I unknowingly started a purification procedure and became enlightened. I had no doubt heard of accelerated thinking and higher abilities. However, my intention at the time was just to seek answers from a higher source. Not to mention trusting if whether a higher source could actually be contacted. I knew something higher existed. That became obvious by seriously taking into account that man did not create man. It's at least mathematically impossible. I had done this by chanting until my body had changed its complete vibrational frequency, which took about 2 hours and some extreme desire. The desire I called HSM, heart, soul, and mind, something I found in the Torah, was worth extracting. It was said that the real formula of contacting the Most High, a focal point to interface with if the One came to such a moment that contact would need to be made. Once I started to activate, all the metal in the room was shaking. I had to remove my watch, belt, and anything that contained metal. I had no idea this was going to be the outcome, and the energy was far more than I anticipated. Thus, I was extremely unprepared and confused, but strong nonetheless. I became the portal for higher selves. As the camera continued to run on my PS3, catching these moments, I knew we had something special. Finally, I had vividly captured my proof of the paranormal. I can only explain it as I went up and came back down very fast, and I could feel the essence of where I had gone inside me, especially in my hands. My friend, who was now my witness, was less prepared. He had also experienced the phenomena by touching me once I reached high vibration. This he had done by accident in fear of the metal situation. This prompted him to grab me and ask me what was happening, like I knew. That caused it to spread to him instantly, and later he said he went down deep into somewhere, saw himself, grabbed himself, and started making an ascension back out with things hot on his trail. He was, what I later figured out, in some lower dimension being ruled by some dominion. This was definitely a result of his current character, although he was given a chance nonetheless. Reason 6. What many ancient tribes have been explaining to Westerners since time immemorial is that we are actually located on a lower plane that is being ruled by various entities. The subplanes are indicated above by triangles in the center. The pictures of beings you see are of various ascended masters or gods who rule different parts of the plane. The 4 outer points are the gates. The Kabbalah reflects the same thing, indicating the planes or spheres or hexagrams. They also served as calendars because the alignment of everything above and below is perfectly in order. Breaking through the netherworld with obviously his Ka in tow, my friend got stuck. How this appeared in our realm was that he looked to me be gone, wacko, done, goosed. I was gathering myself fast, still feeling the strength, but also thinking of the full parameters of just what had occurred. I knew that I had to do something fast because my friend, Fiend, was saying the same 2 words over and over so loud eventually the neighbors would call the cops. He seemed to be in a mental loop. Using the word, I yelled it into his mouth. It was all I could think to do. Later he said in that moment that he saw a light and he was able to hurry to it. That brought him back to this plane. This was my second vivid spiritual encounter. We will now mention with no more delay our source, the exact one, with no equation. Beyond capacity and function, jubilant magnetar disposed in realities self-generated. We swoon in ecstasy as you touch us, we guard thy beloved with our life at no cost. The charge is to admonish the guided with exact knowledge of this time sequence and its mysteries we will expose as they lay bare before us. This is so all things may be made clear, and the path be made level for thy feet. Think not those works of those of my own, nay, I was found by the source, headed swiftly in the wrong direction, and it was then I last visited. In that state I was strengthened by the hosts, who, perceiving in me such a lowly state, but a subtle glow, as we all possess the remnants of the brighter star in our hearts. It is through them it was conveyed to me my mishaps. It was in such joy of returning to the true path, turning from the abyss, that I like ultra rays resplendent, did exhaust plutonium fuel cells so that all in the darkness may know of and come to receive the real light. It was then that I knew that the world could raise its entire vibration by contact with just one person who could hold the frequency. The voice that entered the inside of my head after the charge started to tell me things that I had never read or seen before. I also felt activation of opposite hemisphere of my brain, which came first as a separate voice with a mind of its own. At first I thought I had gone crazy or had broken something in my brain. As I settled down, I realized it was my other half, so excited to be finally heard. I spent weeks on Google checking the information after it was made known to me, and I was fascinated with such a breakthrough, as everything that had been spoken into my mind was accurate, not to mention the hidden things it had revealed. For me, at that moment, I knew there was something they were not telling us. This should be the first subject in school. I imagined how much the encounter would enliven the youth. This is what we wanted. Later, when I was able to enter higher states through simple whole-body breathing techniques, I realized our potential as a species is definitely a threat to anything that seeks to rule over the human race. It would not be possible. The energy of freedom is too great, and when felt, one's life means nothing if they cannot constantly feel it again. If humans were to unlock their true self, thus broadcasting a higher signal or frequency that would permeate the globe, it would merely burn holes in the nets and the webs created to surround our atmosphere. Atmosphere. That's what's keeping us trapped within. They admit the eye can see thousands of miles when there's no atmosphere. This is another phenomena they recorded when in space. This is the time. One is now free to feel and receive the truth from the thin air, which contains a stream of information of now, past, future, and most valuably, who we are. Who we really are is the biggest secret, period. Any wise man thinking on that will agree. What I also felt more than I understood was that it's harder to destroy a planet than it was to keep it in harmony and peace. The planet was so strong, I watched how she took payloads of nuclear arsenals, H-bombs and A-bombs, all while keeping the children snug on the other side of the world, spinning lightly on her axis with only a slight wobble. This is the true food for thought. I was convinced that the majority would want to be on a higher vibration, and I set out almost immediately on that quest. What was conveyed to me then was that many people in our history, all the way up into our current day, claiming spiritual enlightenment. Especially the New Agers were talking to angels and masters, and that had in fact corrupted our world long ago. Many of these beings at a certain point were workers of a much greater force. Thus, they learned various mental and spiritual techniques that appear godlike to humans. In time, pride, jealousy, selfishness, scarcity crept into the order, and ideas that they should divvy up everything that was resourceful to them became prevalent. This is in part due to the nature of the Most High, which does not watch all of its creations like a micromanager. Once the design is put in place, it's off creating more universes, and in time will eventually take its proper form. However, there are phases in between. The creations make up the entire construct of allowing those in-between phases to be possible. We sharpen each other. As with all things, some beings have more senses and thus more power than others. These beings are oftentimes given the name angels, although their classification is much vaster, and the term angel is far from the word that should be used. Consider this, that the modern angels' names end in El. El is the name given by the Hebrews to their god, which corresponds to our planet Saturn. This means all angels work for El, and this you will see is true on various levels as we go on. You will learn to trace the origin of a name using a system that is infallible. Through the correct procedure, you can seriously have a guide to the universe and a map to other worlds inside Earth Dimension 3. Breaking down Saturn, you have Sat and Ern, or Sa and Turn. The word with the most practical use out of these combination is Sat and Ern. As we go on, you will learn who Sat is. As before, the original name of this planet was El. Thus, the name given in English signifies some type of unity between this being Sat and the other simply being Ern. When we drop the N to see if we can get any more clarity, since the Ern's basic meaning is just something you use to put ashes of the cremated dead in, we find that a place that syncs up, Ur. Ur was known as Chaldea, also known as Samaria, also known as Babylon. History says of Ur of Chaldea, home of Marduk, Chaldean magic, and Necronomicon spellbook, was also the home of a young boy named Abram, later Abraham. According to the story, Abram's father, Terah, made idols known as teraphim, and it was Abram's responsibility to peddle these idols to the people. It is said Abram rejected the worship of idols because they had no power. He later discovered the true God and thus became the father of all mankind, just like that. Logically, this story has to have some type of hidden meaning because its literal definition is preposterous. Although almost all people believe in the literal meaning, they believe Abraham is their ancestral father, even when their genealogy places them somewhere like Africa or Asia. These household teraphim caused much trouble throughout the Bible, even after Abram's exit from Ur. Rachel stole teraphim from her father, and he could not rest until they were returned. A few other similar stories exist like this. It is revealed in the sylphs, serpent spirits of the air, whom I call Siths, inhabited these items and would bring forth oracles of the future. Abraham's wife is Sarah, and his father is Terah. It is obvious the real story here is about the unity of the seraphim and the teraphim, and both being spirit forms. Again, since the Bible is a partial account of various stories, only those who have really dissected the clay tablets are able to cross all these characters back over to their original Sumerian archetypes, along with putting together the details of their story about what went on. When we are simply looking for truth and spiritual growth, this all becomes too much. So many have never researched any of this and are at the altars blindly saying amen. They might as well add Ra after that. It's still the same being. Amen Ra. Blindly, they are dragged about. All of the stories in the Sumerian tablets are retold in the Torah after a few alterations, mainly with the names of the individuals involved. By changing the names, it becomes virtually impossible for the common people of the times, most of whom did not read or write, to realize they were still actually following the religion of the Chaldeans long after being led from captivities. The Hebrews became enslaved by the Babylonians, along with many other nations afterwards. As more cultures are put into the melting pot of Babylon, facts become blurred with fiction and languages are turned into Babel. Terah, Abraham's father, and Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, are so close together in spelling, it begs one to wonder what is meant by all this. You will soon see that many of the stories being told are the events of crossbreeding that took place with mankind. Amazingly, many ancient nations such as the Phoenicians had no written language or culture of their own. Instead, they borrowed from everyone they conquered. They altered the original cultures and the languages of these people, saying that they were perfecting them. What audacity! In the Western world, we credit our language, English, with much of our symbolism, like the phoenix, our current death and resurrection doctrine, and many other things to the Phoenicians, who were really the Philistines. Philadelphia was the original state capital of the United States. The biggest mistake a conquered people can make is to begin to imagine that they were never defeated, thus placing their trust in the assailant. We are seeing the results of that now. Our government, spiritual leaders, and instructors have been telling a multitude of lies, many without the slightest knowledge of it. Some are sworn traitors avowed to something much more sinister. We mistakenly have trust the same system that once brutally annihilated everything that had its own will so they could indoctrinate their falsehood. Reason 7. There are traitors amongst us with phenomenal resources that have avowed to something more devious than can normally be conceived. Left unchecked for centuries, they have finally come to the conclusion of an agenda scheduled for the near future. Who will face them? What now has to be done in order for us to discover our true potential is we have to put our real past back together. During the times pharaohs, czars, kings, and shahs despoiled the lands, they found it most important to alter the history, culture, and language of the people they conquered. This is how they gain monopoly over social and spiritual power, the latter being the controller of the former. Most of these factions served the unseen hand far back in our history, so they generally have the same agenda. Removing a person's spiritual belief in themselves leaves them powerless. All of the mysticism has effect based on the belief of the wielder of such power. In ancient times, many had such exemplary belief in their internal power, symbols and talismans, they were difficult to conquer, much less indoctrinate. The tyrants of ancient times sent entire armies to subdue them, and often entire armies were laid to waste. Many eluded those armies by going underground, deep into the mountains, and some left this dimension. After all, what does killing mind-controlled soldiers really solve? The greatest adversary to the human race has been the human race. No matter how much evidence we find for links, devils, aliens, spirits, and various other life forms to the corrosion of our natural state, in all of these stories you will find human traitors that gave them access to our inner circles. The entire human race was a collective of brother and sisterhood, capable of maintaining contact with one another across entire planetary systems. We were grouped more commonly as all humanoids, not black man, white man, yellow man, etc. It's virtually impossible to break apart from the outside anything as strong as human will. This book is not about pointing the finger. This book is about understanding your own original state, how it was altered, how to grow back from it, and even excel beyond its original potential. At this moment, we are in a degraded state, and it is only pride that keeps the individual from admitting this. Power now lies mostly in monetary wealth, not spiritual essence. One will always pass away, and the other is eternal. Common sense is not common. This may sound a little confusing, especially this early on. However, the earlier you see this, the better. When they decided to make the names of the planets in English, they really did begin to turn things in the opposite direction. Searching for other names indigenous tribes use for planets will turn up almost nothing. Some may think this is because in ancient times we had no knowledge of the cosmos, and of course this proves to be untrue. We are told the Sumerians, Egyptians, and a few indigenous tribes from Africa have the only details of the names given to the planets in ancient times. Whatever the case, we can be sure that what we call the planet Saturn in modern times may not be actually referring to the planet with the rings, but more of an idea of evil Sat brought forth from Our consciousness, when not hindered, will always look to the sky for answers. Our spirit is from the sky, or rather far in space, while our bodies are indeed flesh and will remain here as dust. When we innocently inquire about the names of planets, stars, moons, wanting to know more, we get the names that are tainted with deception. The vibration of is that of an animal, and of course so-called early man depicted the entire cosmos as animal forms, rather than the much greater concept space stands for, which is beyond normal life on Earth. It's highly unlikely we will find a horse on the moon, but it's not stopped them from naming quadrants of the moon mare, like nightmare. Reason 8. Quadrants of the moon are called mare. The normal commoner would pronounce it as it sounds. Esoterically, it's pronounced Mary. The names of the spots on the moon are riddled with deep significance to its origin and use. Unlike most modern church participants, those initiated into various magical societies evoke angels and spirits all the time. They do this by various means. One key element involves drawing perfect stars inside of circles or squares. A symbol drawn is physical proof of one's intent. A perfect star is often made with a tool used by the elite called an angle. The word angle is an anagram for angel. The tool itself is shaped like an L. That's right, L. If you notice when drawing a star, it consists of straight lines, and straight lines are opposite to nature, which itself is composed of spheres and circles. The body itself contains no straight lines. These straight lines are known as masculine, while the curved lines are feminine. It's known that fleshly beings are categorized as feminine despite their sexual orientation, while heavenly beings are known as masculine due to their strong ethereal nature, which can even withstand the force of being close proximity to the sun. Reason. An angle, the tool seen below the Masonic G in the shape of an L, is used to draw straight lines, while the protractor above is used to make the perfect circle to create talismans. There is recorded knowledge of 1/3 of the angels in the sphere of Saturn rebelling. Those fallen ones came to Earth and intermingled with women, thus creating the term mankind, meaning kind of like man, but not entirely. No matter how fictitious this may seem, it is in fact true. These beings go under the name of Rephaim, Nephilim, Anunnaki, Titans, Giants, Danites. Along with their offspring, they've made up legends of various mythological creatures of various titles. This resulted from the union of angels of not only women, but also of animals. These offspring became known as demigods, meaning half god, half man, or animal. They possess various powers which caused the indigenous tribes of the time to worship the supreme creators, which was far from true. The head of the fallen angels would place demigods over the people to rule them in a hierarchy or pyramid structure. They would remain in contact with the demigods from their habitations in various constellations such as Orion. Ancient Aram indicates the name of Orion originally being Nephilah, or meaning Nephilim. Orion is depicted as a giant man for this reason. There will be lots of Orion sinks as we go on. They have guided much of what we have seen in the media as children growing up until this very day. As a child, I remember watching a cartoon called Fraggle Rock, which was all about the life of the Fraggles, especially their encounters with giants called ogres of the land. In pre-Christian Scandinavian, Orion's belt is known as Friggle's Rock, no doubt the origin of the name of the cartoon. There is a heavy amount of Scandinavian in our language. Reason 9. The daughters of Cain, who the fallen angels had campaigned, conceived, but they were unable to bring forth their children, and many died. Of the children in the womb, some died, and others split open bellies of their mothers, coming forth by the navel. They thought evil continually, and God bore with them for a time. The Kebra Nagast. Entire material and ethereal kingdoms below the third heaven were erected and hewn for their spiritual and physical residence. The task of building these lofty havens fell to the humans in this world and the one to come. What a cruel treatment. Expansive kingdoms the slaves did build, but the fact was that the humans were in the lower dimensions with a bad case of memory loss, only being allowed at times just to worship the god and bask in its false light. Those were the favored ones. The other ones lived much worse than when truly alive in unity with the Most High. Thus, these lower planes became known as Netherworld, Arulu, Amenti, Demat, Elysium, Sheol, Hades, Oz, the Matrix, Imperishable Devachanic Plane, Malkuth, Maya, Lemura, a place where injustice was allowed to rule through Igigi, Neters, Balaam, Valkyries, Mares, and Manes for a time, since everything has its place in contrast. Reason 10. Man has been the constructor for these gods, building them high places so they may enjoy. What the humans may have gotten in return are lifetimes of being a servant with little reward. Their structures are always placed on ley lines to control the energy in the area. In order for many regions to be free, some building must be removed from the ley lines. They are binding the energy of freedom and suppressing clear thought. In history, when structures bind the ley lines for too long, cataclysms occur and shake everything off of them. Reason 11. The 2012 Olympics logo says Zion. Even more diabolical is the final Olympian ritual, which will return home to London on the ley lines of old monoliths. The Greek Olympians Hesta, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, Ares, Demeter, Hermes, Poseidon, Athena, Zeus, Artemis, and Apollo were their chief gods, most of them bloodthirsty titans, giants, Nephilim. Not many will see this all coming, only a few will escape. Disbelievers block their own way. We sent men, women, and even pure ones to them to persuade them that there were multiple heavens and that they were caught up in the lower dimensions, deceived by the stars they were, and they would not listen. They would not forsake the partners they had subscribed with the Most High, imagining them to be in favor of their growth, in spite that gods gave them little and blocked the path of ascension. Thus, there was a silence of man and woman's great deeds in heaven. There was little to harvest. Truly, the people were not guided, trading paper for life. Then the veil began to lift, and once again man and woman recognized each other as the only source of harmony. We were all together then, man and woman, shaping and reforming the new world. Truly, our work is not in vain. Just as the trees, we are numerous and patient, as we provide man and woman their substance, just as we all must live. We are currently positioned in a place Kabbalistically known as Malkuth, which means foundation. This is why the gods often say Earth is their footstool. Indeed, some of the spirit energies were so large, it is true that Earth could be, in fact, used as a footstool by them. Malkuth consists of various life forms with limited senses. Thus, they are vibrating at a lower frequency in order to form something as solid as a foundation. To make this easier to understand, a rock is actually in motion, although it is vibrating so slow it's heavy, hard, and what appears to be immovable, although it is just moving so slow you do not have time to see its movement. The more senses we lose, the more we become like a rock, which means our emotional movement and the idea of things lessen as we descend. This is also the secret to why gargoyles, the Sumerian stone cherubs, the Sphinx, and various other stone figures have survived from antiquity and are all known to be in fact alive and resonating a certain type of energy. Lower life forms are also on a low vibration like rock, thus they at times inhabit stones. These figures are kept around for protection against other entities by magicians. Reason 12. Pictured above are statues that have been passed from magician to magician. As you see here, J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter series, in possession of the same gargoyle John Dee, a well-known magician, used to keep in his possession. The spirit lives within the stone. The strength of stone is obvious by its durability. An adept is familiar with all types of stone and the elemental gnomes who have wisdom of earth and fashioning things out of the earth. Here are just a few buildings that are positioned on major ley lines. The ley lines have been known since ancient times, discovered by dowsing and also witnessing how things grow in certain areas. A spiraling tree is often on a ley line. Below you see the earth grid of major ley lines, which you will find structures built upon. The smaller ley lines are generally not mapped in such detail. There were also those who just signed up for the pantheism, since the ladder is ascending and descending. They naturally gravitated towards the negative. The lower dimensional beings, which also make up the foundation we stand on, had its way with them while their channel was open, and they spoke whatever message would bring more energy and treasure to their coffers. They were led by distortion. Man and woman involved themselves with beings that possessed and incarnated into their own human bodies. Some of these beings either never had a vocal box or are no longer in possession of one, nor a corporeal body to operate on the third physical plane. Numerous they are, and they could not be counted, as if opening a sealed vault of misshaped things that spawn against themselves in what would seem like an instant. Pandora's box, tricks of the god Pan, lord of panic and pandemic. Those who were more interested in the fast route, imagining that spiritual work was a road to riches, would inherit the curse of Ammon. Ammon, one of the first names given to the planet Jupiter, and is in fact a very active Egyptian god. Jupiter is one of the largest planets in this system. From here, we will refer to Jupiter or Ammon as we keep track of this being. Even the Bible scripture gives a clue when it says, "Thou canst serve both God and Mammon." Unfortunately, it didn't leave more detailed information. The Am in Ammon is where the Am in America comes from, and the great I Am. You will find an advanced, intelligent amphibian called Onaz, the fish god, amongst them, along with its offspring such as Dagon. They crossed into our world long ago under the Sumerian name Ea, pronounced Ea, Lord and King of the Sea. One of the greatest questions that will ultimately come to mind is, are the actual planets themselves doing this, or are these malevolent beings with various powers who have fooled man into believing they are the planets? To answer that, we will have to consider a few things. The planets themselves are in a fixed movement, everything interacting together. I personally know that there are many more planets in our immediate system, and that most know nothing of such as Vulcan. The heaviest spiritual involvement from these satellites seems to come from asteroids like Venus and Ceres, along with what we call meteorites, falling stars, and comets that seem to cause many problems. There are also hollowed artificial satellites such as our moon, Sin, and Phobos, which are bases of some sort. Think of this also, the Bible is supposed to be a holy book, and in the end you find a passage that says something like, "Woe to the one who adds or takes away from what is written in this book. We will add to him the plagues of this book and take away his name from the book of life." There's obviously a faction that cares nothing about this warning, because every time a new edition to the Bible comes out, there are serious changes. People need to start seeing that the ones who are changing it care nothing for the curses, because they are none, and the book itself has stories borrowed from everywhere. Such was the way of these people. The negative forces are infamous for being, if a being says, "I am Ammon, I am Jupiter, planet, you know, as the biggest." I find this no different from a man who says, "I am the son of the sun, and because of that I have leave to destroy everything in my path." Man has been notorious for blindly following these possessed, deluded traders who are blurred by their own desire to iconoclast themselves in the mold of time and usurp the throne of the Great One, which is unreachable and immeasurable. Such a man can charge into battle with great strength, imagining he will vanquish his foes, and then, the next thing, he wakes in evil Elysium, Jehonan, for such foolish thoughts. Everything material will pass away at some point, thus it is only wise to seek immortality with everything at your disposal, letting nothing impede your way. Around you at all times are those who will never see what's coming. They do not desire it nor believe it, because they have shut the door on themselves and they are wandering in the dark. Protect yourself from becoming enveloped in their aura of deluded drunkenness, where every day for them is the same as the last, and they see it not that time draws nigh. What a waste. Judgment itself is taking place now. We are in 2012 at this moment because of the delay of the Gregorian calendar. Many have knowingly forfeited their chance to ascend, and thus they are like crabs in a bucket, pulling everyone else they can around them into the same prison they created for themselves. Beware of those who you know who are involved in some sort of dark occult practice. It is now time for the unseen hand or Dark Lord to exact recompense from them. They are now being used to betray even those they were closest to. Many of them did not expect this time to come and were lied to. They imagined a ritual game, a mere fraternity hazing. Now they have phantoms as their companions that fill their dreams with absurd visions. There is no rest for the wicked. A sorceress had done all the bidding for the Dark Lord and took pride in it. The Dark Lord promised her he would award her deeds in the underworld. With this promise, she worked more vigorously, causing division, setting traps for those who had found themselves in her web. On her untimely death, she was transferred to the underworld where the negative forces seized her and commenced to torturing her, pulling her soul apart. She cursed them profusely and demanded to speak with the ruler of the dominions who was watching from afar. When approaching, she said, "I have done everything you required of me, even more. I have sown discord with the peaceful and separated many from love and happiness. This I have done for you, and the reward you promised me. Where is it?" He said, "I lied. Did they not tell you I was the father of lies? I found more pleasure in betrayal than I do in honor. Think not my titles go without proof." And he waved his hand for his minions to commence as he watched. Reason 13. The Greek god Jupiter and his consort Juno. Indeed, this is not a planet. This is a man. Imposter. Obviously, not a god for daughters. Planets do something entirely different than impersonate themselves as men who have women. Nor do they ever appear. As will be made clear, what we are dealing with at times is interplanetary, extra-dimensional, highly intelligent space scum. One simply has to think that although some may perceive already that we are alone in this universe, which is profoundly untrue, if we blew up Earth, it would soon cause a chain of reaction of cataclysms for the entire galaxy. Thus, we have been governed by higher forces that oversee the timing of events so that crazy dictator doesn't slip in on the nuclear kill switch. There are principalities, rulers, forces, and dominions in place working out an entire larger scheme that makes Earth one of the more value subdued, not destroyed. Think of the loss of resources and biological data. Earth is a storehouse of genes working together well enough. For one moment, do not doubt all these genes are in cryotubes fully cataloged and ready to implant into other worlds, which is part of terraforming a planet and getting them prepared for higher life forms like me and you. Since we know that there are other beings with other senses, we can endeavor to obtain those senses also. This separates us from animals who seldomly openly enlist the help of humans. This also means that some have higher senses, have already discovered harmony and benefits of a collective mind, the power in numbers, the elements, etc. Thus, there is a place to go. It is entirely possible that the knowledge of how to alter an entire planetary frequency with just insects that also emit sound frequency is on the Orion arsenal of technology. This moves us further into the intelligence of beings who are more advanced in some ways than us. We could go so far in imagining what they have and what they can do, and we would be more than likely right. However, what is of value here is to show that they are not the creator of all things. They too had a creator. If we find ourselves in service, it should be to that only. They are no doubt involved in our evolution. There can be no question of it. Just as the wheel has saved us endless amounts of time and effort so we may travel further, faster. If these beings gave us TV, or should I say things like cathode ray tube and the integrated circuit, that's enough altering right there. Case closed. The way many beings feel about Earth is they should not give something that looks like dust compared to Antares or Betelgeuse the honor of destroying the whole galaxy. Everything must evolve in time, and for the segment of the human race, that time is long overdue. The lower dimension now awaits occupying the spot we are in now. Since the information vault is now open, you can gain a higher level of esoteric intelligence without being fully initiated. Thus, stuck in some lower dimension slave world ruled by jealous maniacs because you joined the wrong group chanting Namaste, Namesat. Some of the most valuable portions of this information has come from higher beings still reaching back to help along the children, which we all are. They gave no names, and they demanded no worship save the original Creator, in which all things will eventually have to face, and its patient shrouded within itself, majestic and wise. Many of the forces that have invisibly protected and guided the human race have long since ascended past the points where they can any longer interact with the earth because of contamination and its lack of pure ideas. Thus, there is a heavy need for new ethereal planetary workers, not golden age materialists. On the flip side, there are those working in the dark force who have kept the masses and its recent segment of time away from true wisdom. Their doctrine is to know, dare, will, and keep silent. One should understand their oath to keep silent. They are all around and they would never reveal their identity. Those who have read works like The Art of War and The Law of Seduction should get a general idea of how they operate in business, much less in the spiritual world. These particular books, written by Sun Tzu, along with the work of Machiavelli, such as The Prince, and various other shrewd titles, which are required reading for the upcoming business elite. In addition, they do not just read them, but they put into play the methods being elaborated upon, as if the world was only a giant chessboard with human pieces. Even now, this particular work which you hold in your hands is allowed to reach the mainstream, not because they could not easily stop it, but because it fulfills another one of the prophecies. Thus they cannot plug the loophole which has been made. Although they plan increasingly, the Most High is the greatest planner. Have you not noticed that the forces that seek to hinder always tell you what is to come in the future before it happens? Even in the Bible, there's always a solemn warning about the prophet before the destruction. This is, in fact, a law of the universe which exists so that all conscious beings on the planet may have a choice of whether they want to participate in the collective planned future of the planet, attempt to do something to prevent it, or emancipate themselves from it entirely, which is always an option. We do hold the master button in our personal earth life. If we want to really exit, we can make it happen. Some type of choice always clings to us. Our future is in the beautiful fractalized shape of a myriad of choices. As you see within the word planet, there is plan there, which we will call planned net 10, which means the end of one world, and of course many new worlds will begin after. Our status in the ungoverned worlds, which has much to do with our alkalides and milestones which we have crossed in our previous world of origin. This information always remains in our aura, even if we are unaware of it. Think of yourself throughout the whole universe as someone who assisted your race in ascension. As all things are recorded, that's what the record will reflect once the deed is accomplished. Every action we make will always be contained somewhere. It determines what we are to face next on the various levels of action and reaction. It can always be accessed, cannot be erased, just balanced. If you were strong, did you protect the weak? If you were truly wise, did you share your knowledge to your best ability? If you possess wealth, did you distribute the goods committed on your charge? It was known that each segment of astrological time is controlled by a particular planet. That planet is responsible for emitting the energy which is necessary to accomplish what has to be done during that cycle. The universe can be looked at as a big clock on which the planets rotate positions as if on massive cogs. It's known that Mars was once in the position we are occupying now in the cosmos. They were the third planet with a lush surface, oceans, etc. What is left now after their wars is just their core, in which we still find war-torn life. Mars was 3 times larger than Earth, a sad story that was. The name Mars and Wars makes it not hard to piece together what happened on the scorched red planet known to be the Marshall Planet of this system. The planet was split into 2 warring factions that went on to a stage of war we would call biological nuclear. The effects were far-reaching, creating a ghost world of infected souls. Lemuria, in fact, means ghost world. A remnant of one of the Martian factions were sent to Earth just in case their race faced total oblivion. They are today known as the Zulu tribe of Ifrika. In their legends, you'll find the history of their advent from Mars. They were warriors. They have no shame in admitting this. The wars fought on Mars continue here on Earth between the 2 factions called Atlanteans and Lemurians. We find Shaka Zulu was one of the earliest African films introduced into our psyche for a reason that will be obvious later. The original Phoenicians were also of darker skin tone. It may be of value for you to start seeing these deities, gods, spirits, demons, as beings alien to you, because there are many of them that did not originate here on Earth. In ancient times, people had gained knowledge of this and began to emulate the movements of energy, stars, and planets, and thus became completely alienated from the people. This is also when the elitist regions of the chosen people began to flourish. Those who wished to be in power during the coming era would make pacts and oaths with spirit energies, and from there they would become fleshly vessels doing all the biddings of these rogues by declaring war on unbelieving infidels. Even the word peace means something that must be split up, and only a portion remains. The word unity also means unit or part, not the whole thing. We have grown so accustomed to these words we don't see that every time nations use it as a reason to go to war, we get exactly what we ask for, sending units to tear things to pieces. The world has now been divided into so many pieces, we will all become isolated from one another, and thus think our true enemy is our fellow man and women, and silently in the cabal rules one who's not human at all. I shall smite its face. These factions were often at war. They began through submission and then continued with religion. This brought about complete conversion of the captor. Those who became initiated into the dark brotherhood and sisterhood cults were taught the finer details of the spirit world and how it works. Vile beings in the realm of afterlife, betwixt dimensions, began hoarding the human souls after death. Other times we were made while living to go to physical war in the name of gods which only hurt us, fragile flesh us. This was forbidden times. Man was lost worshipping gods, stars, asteroids, moons, thus destiny was created. Just as you see in the story of Jesus, the Essenes, known then as the Magi, were following a star that indicated to them the birth of what they had been waiting for. You will find many sects of ancient men that follow stars. The Ishmaelite Arabs, along with the Egyptians, had extensive knowledge of such thing due to the clarity of the stars in the desert on a clear Arabian night. Of course, the knowledge of genius of the genie, which is jinn or jan, many of which are trapped in desert regions of the sand. Sand is glass. They were confined there, encased under sheets of it until men removed them from the bottle. They could, beyond doubt, prove that when a baby was born, a star appeared first, thus they had knowledge of when someone important was born. Reason 14. The Egyptians were given extensive star charts of animalistic nature in which they emulated. The priesthood itself was in such complexity that the people were made to dedicate every act of daily life to a separate star or deity, leaving little room for natural growth and unadulterated consciousness expansion. Subtly, this becomes another reason why we as people become servants of kings, queens, presidents, dictators, and icons who all follow the procession. I will not bore the reader with the tales that can be seen as myth in this primitive time with the futuristic coding that we live in. We will just dive right into things as they are now. This way you have little to research because it's all happening around you as you live the truth. The world has now become a very large version of the boy who crawled wolf. Now that the wolf is upon us, few believe that there even is such a thing. Many have come saying that they know what the future holds, only to disappoint those who felt foolish to believe them, and this has made many people wary of the warning and preparation. In this, I know you will find an energy that will arouse you once more. Listen, and I will instruct thee once more how to turn this language in thy favor. Gird thy comprehension, and fail not to seek understanding in these words. Humans have grown indeed complex, and have no simple answer for their troubles, so look not for something easy on the explanation. The time grows nigh, and many are at the end of their cycle, some raising to eternal beauty, and others to layers of retribution, sheets of fire in which they must be passed through with no end, miserable. If you say, I am saved, lo, you are in error. None can be sure. If you say, I will bow down now, nay, it will be impossible to stand up. It is wise to make haste in embedding your mind with exact knowledge beyond reproach, so you may position yourself to receive fair judgment as you have already been observed. The faithful will find these words sweet to their ears, while the faithless will be made to listen for their jinn, even a way to seek to escape what has come, and it will most surely not delay past the appointed time. El, aka Saturn, aka Father Time for short, was the god known to rule the age of Aquarius, which we now find ourselves in again as of February 14th, 2009, Valentine's Day. The symbol of our Valentine's Day is the heart being pierced by an arrow. It is the esoteric symbolism of when our universe, known as Sagittarius Dwarf, will be passing through the heart of the Milky Way, crossing to the parallel universe B for a galactic lineup. At this very moment, while we were crossing the Great Divide and an opportunity has been proclaimed for eons, is taking place for those who are in the know. Reason 15. This is by far not the first Aquarian or Golden Age. In fact, this is only represents the time of a shift. The energy of the cosmos actually assists a person if they do a little seeking to find higher truth. Once that time passes, those who have not seized enlightenment will come around the cycle again after death, remembering little of what happened. The Golden Age movement was designed to get the whole world to rewind and relive a long past time. The most recent Golden Age in our history was the times of Hitler and Nazi Germany. The opportunity is the merging of collective minds and frequencies, allowing an individual to become the portal for higher essence and their higher purpose. Purpose equals energy. This other world is what we glimpse ourselves in at times while we are asleep or in a vision. In this world, everything appears as it really is, and there are few limits. One has higher senses, can fly through the ether, considers not time, and can make contact with multiple beings. Omnipresent and the art of being in more than one place at a time is possible in this parallel realm. Thus you can visit multiple people all in one moment. This is why it's easier to contact other beings while in lucid sleep, because the controllers do their best to keep us from being conscious while in that world, even more than they do in this one. We tend to watch our dreams rather than control them, as in society we have a tendency to take things as they come and react accordingly rather than getting directly involved with the big picture. On our third dimension, there are physical laws against omnipresence. Generally, you can only separate your body into two parts while on the third dimension. One of those two, when split, is basically a vegetable, the body. When lacking a soul, will appear limp with shallow life signs until the spirit re-empties it. The technique itself is not a natural gift, takes proper training, as Dr. Monroe revealed in his hemisphere synchronization techniques before the CIA gained control of his work and altered it. Or maybe he was the CIA all along, especially since his father was a known CIA agent. When you are lucid, riding the dream like a wave, you can call forth beings, and if you have the might to understand them, they will appear. Then you will see what they really are, and you will learn why many of them we should not be worshiping. Destruction is the main part of keeping up the chaos on Earth, and many of these beings are destroyers. Now that the Hindu pantheism is the preference for the New World Order, they have unleashed a whole retinue of destroyers like Shiva, Kali, Lakshmi. They con the person by telling them to think they must be destroyed completely to be made new again as they dissolve into nothingness. They are instructed to chant and meditate on the destroyer, which is a awakening tool. This is no different than the nonsense like boiling frog's eyes in pigeon blood, which Agrippa used to recommend to Caesar. In the end, if these things could ever be positive, because it began in negativity. Kali is bedecked with several heads of victims she has destroyed. We will have to learn again how to judge with common sense and take things at face value. For many of us, our life is attached to time, and the clock is one of the most valuable tools in controlling the mind. The elite know there becomes no use in counting time unless you plan on it running out. Imagine in immortality and infinity, someone actually counting their hours and minutes. Talk about useless. Saturn, also known as Kronos, which is where words like chronological and chronograph come from, was elected for time because of his rings, which signified, like an old tree, his length of time in the galaxy. In other words, those attempting to learn from the age of this universe looked first to Saturn and the debris and its rings containing residue of lost planets that entered golden age of destruction and chaos, now long forgotten, although their essence still remains. Reason 16. The stunning rings of Sat, rich with debris of forgotten planets, planets such as Maldek and Vulcan, are clearly seen on ancient star maps, but are now somehow gone. Some, I believe, are still in existence, others have left this galaxy, and some were destroyed in wars. The sign of Aquarius, or the Golden Age, bears witness with two wavy lines in which some say are the signs of water and others that of lightning bolts. Known as the Age of Man, the water being dumped out signifies the cleansing or deluge. The mystery of lightning was shown by shooting an electron in sterile water and watching as a single cell of life form appeared out of thin air in a portal, depending on your perspective. That showed us that life could be created from nowhere out of virtually nothing except energy. This, of course, destroys evolution theory. At this point, there are many beings leeching from the human race under many guises. Reason 17. The classic white bearded depiction of Saturn. Few on the outer circle have figured out that Saturn is affiliated with the serpent. Notice the larger serpent underneath Saturn's arm, not to mention what is happening to the child. They also refer to the bearded god as the great architect, though he destroys everything he builds. This is why Santa and the Wizard of Oz fit this motif. Reason 18. The Brotherhood of Saturn is in big service today, underpinning various organizations. Depicted below are the inner circle. The outer circle consists of all of the religious projects erected for global domination. This is Sat, Saturday, Satan, Santa, Satan, Saint, Satans, Sabbath, etc. Sir, Sar, Sir, and Sor are all names for the serpent energy. Ye shall know them by their works. Long before the Third Reich, Amun was worshipped as chief deity of many nations. The knowledge of Amun, being one of the largest planet in this solar system, was known since ancient times. You can see then why many wanted to find favor with Amun, since they believed it is the biggest. Thus, it was also the strongest. Again, it is the name changes that sometimes throw us off the trail, and that is, of course, if we have even decided to investigate what could be going on beyond the level of petty politics. Amen is also Pa, Thor, Jove, Pater, pronounced Potter. Reason 19. When you see the bearded depiction, you already know who is involved. George Lucas is a Saturn alien. Europa, a moon in Amen's orbit, is where Europe got her name from. This goddess from Crete, daughter of giant Sidon, set up a civilization where we now find Europe. Many of the beings were referred to as giants because in other civilization, their home planets were much bigger than Earth. It can be assumed that their height proportion in this conjunction with the size of their planet. Amen has 63 moons orbiting it, while we have only one, and that one moon has a lot of influence over the minds of our planetary inhabitants because of the magnetic energy. As will be seen more and more, humans are energy, and we have a magnetic core and poles, just the same as a planet, hence the term bipolar. To show a brief length, we will talk of another tool used against us, which is money. This is by far the most effective tool, so I will discuss its spirit origin. The money we now use is pauper. We are no longer really using currency made of metals, as you may have noticed. In the old days, if you had lots of silver or gold, you at least had the energy of these metals around you, and they carried certain types of strength that gave one certain spiritual advantages. Now we are on paper. Why? The main advert for this is the first pope, of which his parents were papists. The papist is the person who makes paper parchment. This magical art was known to be taught by one of the fallen angels and is discussed in the book of Enoch under cutting roots. Certain trees were blended together and formed into a parchment have a binding effect. This is the basis for the special paper a talisman must be inscribed on. When you look at the currency of the world, which has been revealed in the US $1 bill, you can see many magical symbols, especially stars, and even the magnetic strip give it power. The paper itself holds a binding energy that perpetuates our desire for it. This is one of the wicked things done by papacy by direction of esoteric knowledge of the Jesuits. Reason 20. While pretending to teach moderation and piety, the vice generates for the wicked ones spew their poison of money, mammon, all over the earth. Few know of the Black Pope, which controls the Jesuit arm of the papacy. The money has become the stumbling block of the world. I've heard many say he is our Pope. Indeed, they will share his lot. To the left is an astral projection of the Pope. The use of the trees for magic has been their main tactic. Tree, 3, word, wood. Looking at our world today, one should not be surprised that destruction and chaos beyond preconceived proportion could be possibly looming in the future. We have the NWO Zionists who no longer wants money, only blood. The Anunnaki ship Nibiru, or Planet X, which can be seen from the South Pole, lazily head this direction. At the end of the 13-moon Mayan calendar, global warming beyond reversal, Antichrist in Las Vegas and India, Quetzalcoatl the Feather Serpent scheduling a tour, the proposed alien invasion warming our ships, the galactic lineup clicking into place, and a population doubling by 2012, and a host of other wild cards give us a jolt for the future. It is safe to say that maybe one should start tuning into the higher frequency and phone home just in case one of these things just happens, and maybe all of them at the same time. In any event, this book will serve to prepare the sincere while still making good read for the ever remaining skeptic, which I began as myself. It is better to think of this way, since the earth continues to be polluted and mistreated with no sign of massive reversal. We can move a step ahead and just come to the conclusion that all of this is happening to promote us to wake up from the smoldering and see what else is out there. We must connect with our other self then, with spirit newly mended. We can go to the next wavelength. With this formulation, we are now wholly prepared to be remembered. Everything we need being eternal. We are self-sufficient to move about the galaxy to meet new life which equals new experience. This ensures our proper growth and of course that we don't get bored in immortality, caught in infinite loops of Klepoth. Just how long can we as a people really wake up every morning, battle traffic, suck fresh smog, get to work, give half of what we earn to fascists, come home, eat Codex Alimentarius infested food, and get digitally mind controlled by a flat screen, go to sleep, not remember our dreams, start over the next day? Come on, have you noticed that? For many, it seems like the movie Groundhog's Day. February 22nd, 33rd day of the year, and why are we taking this? There's something that has not been figured out, not because of a lack of intelligence, but rather the height of distraction. I personally believe that right now in your hands is what you need to get your perspective focused once again on the main picture. The census says our population will actually double by the year 2012. The reader should highly consider if the Earth can handle double the trouble that it is now. It is due time that the world change, and the same energy used to destroy for so long will now consume those who used it in vain, as they are consumed in the reflux current. The elite know there would be those who would come able to convert their negative energy they spewed upon us into positive. They tried to tell us it was only one, the anagram for Neo, that could do it is far from the truth. They feared and anticipated that the younger generation, who seemed to have a unique ability of converting bad into good, could catch on at some point and break the matrix. This term, the matrix, comes from the head of the Greek goddess pantheon known as Mediatrix, of whom their descendants come from Media. Reason 21. The youth of today withstand heavy bombardments of mind control and degradation, some becoming stronger and smarter than their predecessors, while others hopelessly face early termination of mental and physical poisoning of the elite. There are those who serve consolidated dark energies under an elitist pretense and thus have been eating away at society for centuries. We will uncover their deeds and their involvement in this golden age, amongst many other things, it behooves you to know, as they are trampled beneath our feet. This will not stop them. No, it's too late for that. The judgment is set for the children of Seth, and they would just as soon push all nuclear buttons before they would cease and desist. What a miserable brood they are. Even now, our government looms over 50 pounds of weapon-grade plutonium, in which it would take only one to blow up the whole Earth. This plutonium is being kept in the satellites we have in orbit over the planet. This serves as a way to keep benevolent forces from entering our atmosphere and saving the many species besides humans that exist here. Not to mention, it is our responsibility to emancipate our own race. The world government has proclaimed to benevolent extraterrestrials that if they seek to physically intervene, then they can pick up the ashes. This is why we don't see avid aid from other benevolent humanoid factions. They remain at the status of unseen. They show us the way through signs and seldom materialize. I have personally viewed videos recorded by NASA showing the use of the plasma cannon developed by Nikola Tesla to shoot at other spacecraft seeking to enter our atmosphere. Whether these craft are friendly or hostile cannot be determined by the video. However, it is safe to say that the prison planet is being guarded. Our minds now serve as the only link to those who seek to give us assistance. Internal charity is all they need to contact us. It is good, this is all. It takes millions to go into space by physical ship, but it's free with your body. What a treat the Most High gave us, $1 million ethereal vacation vehicle. This is written so you'll be able to recognize friend from foe, allowing you to steer your course to what comes after the destruction and chaos, which is surely new worlds. You will do all of this while evading what you see so many people get caught up in because of belief and non-preparation. The world leaders are not the allies they have showed on numerous occasions that they are. Merely puppets, and are fully animated and can put on quite a show that often deludes the non-observant. Reason 22. Politics is all a game, the joke is on us. Time and again, the masses fall for the trick. We sent warners to them, and they taunted them, saying, "Show us this God you speak of. You are crazy and deluded. Where is it? We cannot see it." Thus they imagined they could see pure energy with two eyes, and not the one given them by the Creator, which they kept closed and beyond function in the center of their heads. So they were divided amongst themselves, wondering if what was spoken was truth, and they fell under conviction. They returned to one of the warners with threats, saying, "Give us the name of your God, and we shall see." But alas, the warner could not provide a vibration familiar to them, so they stoned him, raised him as a martyr, and invented a name that was pleasing to them. Reason 23. When the third eye is activated, the illusion collapses, and then you see the world as it truly is. The oath of silence has kept many people from telling you what is detailed here in this fabulous work. The first reason most people were told to keep this under the strictest confidence was the ability for it to allow a powerful system to continue unchecked and running with few interruptions. Those keeping the secret could only benefit as long as what they were doing in its totality remained a secret. Most organizations, especially secret societies, are compartmentalized in a way where each group is only holding a fraction of the truth. Thus, new initiates never know the complete plan. Reason. Old plans are now coming to their completion, and all the workers for the unseen hand are in key places of the government waiting to carry out the next part of the plan. Reason 24. All important positions of power, even the past presidency, are run by individuals who are initiated into secret societies. They don't keep their involvement a secret, just their practices. One only needs to go back 200 years, and they find the entire civilized world involved in dark magic and grimoires. Countless novels were written by men who had made pacts with demonic life forms to represent them and do their bidding. This became so popular, demons trapped in jars, talismans, gems, and various other tools of dark magic were sold on black market at high value. The underworld operates in the dark, and it is hidden from plain view. The leaders of this world go about every day with ease and receive little attention by the masses as they crush the weak, expressing no remorse. A simple look at the criminal news network, CNN, and you'll see glorified slaughter in high definition. Many that have risen in efforts to oppose the tyrants have often been unsuccessful due to their lack of knowledge about the high places, and also in regards to how the elite possess and control power. It is time that we admit we are not dealing with dummies that just need to be voted out of office. There is evidence of a massive plot that needs to be put to ruin. Leaders like Martin Luther King arose attempting to free people, but they were still remained trapped to the religion that did little for those he represented. The first ship that brought Nubians to America was named Jesus. The most Christianity seemed to do for the Africans was make them more passive, brainwashed servants. In fact, pacifist movements always come into play when people were finally ready to rebel against the oppressor at the cost of their lives. There is a certain power that possesses a person when they are willing to lay down their life so that children may have one. This power often preserves the life of the courageous. This is a true act of unselfishness, a noble deed. After all, the adults that have lived till at least 30 in our current era have seen so much of life already. We have enjoyed what it took lifetimes for our predecessors to experience all in one vacation. We should thus do our duty in carving out a world for the innocent youth who have already bear the gifts of the future in their complex, beautiful minds. This is something I believe our earliest ancestors attempted to do, thus we must finish what they started. Reason 25. Martin Luther King receives an award from Illuminist Jacob Rothschild. The Illuminati plan pro-peace agendas all over the world to make people docile while they put the finishing touches on the New World Order. The tactics often used remain the same. Many have become traitors to their people for a moment of power that they will regret, but lack reason, deluded by promises of great material wealth, which will corrode under the inevitable pressure of time. We shall take up account with their souls. When looking today at those that still rule, their high ranks have been depleted, thus they are making new pacts and selling what does not belong to them. This extends beyond material resources and has crossed into plasmic and ethereal. Surprise, bartered through the trade routes that extend beyond Earth. All the miles that have been walked, all the pain that has been endured, all the walls that have been torn down, but we have one final task by delivering the final blow to the tyrants before they reinforce and re-legion. The soldier can no longer continue this present day because he knows what he's doing is obviously not for patriotism. So they put him behind a screen to kill and make it look like a video game as he flies a drone, like it's on PlayStation 3. What he kills no longer brings a feeling, since even the victims appear just as white lights or blobs of infrared on the screen in the tank or plane or battleship. Since the world is now in the information age, every soldier has access to Zeitgeist and many more publications revealing the intention behind the hideous wars of the past. This makes him question his role as in such disasters, since he sees that it is not to protect a country that we continue to kill thousands. Since they foresaw this coming, the chemicals already put in the soldier's diet to keep him subservient were increased. He was removed from the front line and put behind the computer to deal out death, still remaining under the foot of general. Reason 26. With movies like Zeitgeist, Fahrenheit 9/11, and numerous YouTube videos, the modern soldier will be well informed of the internal plots and black bag jobs of the elite. Soon the true hero, which is given another name entirely, will rise from amongst their ranks, turning the tide against the negative forces. Injustice will not continue forever. Even a broken clock is right at least 2 times a day. The hero, whore, was a temple prostitute esoteric story character. We are much greater, encrusted 7-fold with positive energy as armor, the mighty. The biggest issue we have with overpopulation is people seldom greet each other anymore. When passing by on the street, jogging in the park, walking on the beach, pretty much anywhere unless people are drinking, and then nothing is clear. Truly, if we were prepared to see a one-eyed green alien and accept them before we can see our own neighbor who may be of different ethnicity, human nonetheless, we have missed the mark. There was a time that if you happened to see another human while in transit, you immediately greeted each other with hugs and kisses of astonishment as you tried to communicate by first giving gifts and showing them things you had found on your journeys as they did the same. You would explain to them the various territories you had crossed, what resources were there, and what to be aware of. Oftentimes you learned their customs and came to respect their individuality, marveling at how the Creator made up things so diverse. Now that has faded away and people are looked at as expendable, some even as worthless by others as racism increases. They have forgotten that if you climbed up the ladder, you were in perfect position to help the person below you. Instead, they give them the boot in the face, knocking them down further. We must reestablish communication. When you look around, if you see someone is lonely or troubled, speak to them. I find it amazing men will speak with devils, demons, and brutes, but not their own kin. Reason 27. The unique blend of ethnicities is one of the greatest assets of Earth. We have so many things to share with one another, while religion has kept us divided, teaching us not to mingle with one another. Our souls are all unique and none are the same, as we operate on a team of multiple functions endowed with splendor and beauty. It is only the blind that cannot see this. People, no matter the color, never overcame, and they still face a constant barrage of self-degrading tactics, especially by the sellouts of the music industry, bombarding the world with low-frequency sounds. This is not just exclusive to the African Americans, but all the races that have members of who, thinking only of themselves, and have become the catalyst used by the dark elite to deceive their people. The Brotherhood of Ma sent Mahatma Gandhi a firm contract to the Theosophical Society, as the Mahatmas and the Maitreyas have always been. They were sent to quell the disturbances in India with pro-peace movement so the British could regain control as the uprisings began. The Indians, a people tired of being enslaved in their own territory by the British, finally reached boiling point. They pacified them through Mahatma's pro-peace teachings and kept them from taking back Persia until England could regain strength from spreading itself too thin in its hasty plans to complete world domination. Now they have turned their country into a giant telemarketing call center. Reason 28. Modern research in behavioral science and gestures has shown all of the individuals on the left to be insincere. The latest Lord Maitreya, positioned in the center of globalist Benjamin Creme, is scheduled to make his advent once the U.S. economy collapses. Lord Maitreya has already appeared in several countries of the Orient, and all the spiritual leaders are endorsing him. Maitreya says he is the Maitreya, Messiah, Mahdi, that all religions have proclaimed to be waiting the arrival of. His miracles so far have been magnetizing water in which people can enter and become healed. There is no limit to these types of deceptions in these days, as the science and energy of the body produces what appears to be miracles to people who don't know they can do the same thing. If you ask me, did these men and women know that they were being used, I will tell you that I believe some do not. It seems they believed in peace so much it fulfilled them completely beyond understanding of bigger pictures. They could not be themselves if it was under some type of false pretense. To me, it's no different from the pastor of a church, the congressman with the beautiful family and the great smile, the bartender, or the inspired musician who brings forth the works of degradation. Reason 29. Media Mongol Sean Combs is actually wearing the Maltese cross, which symbolizes a heavier involvement in Zionist agenda. This cross cannot be worn unless you are an initiate. Even the rapper Jay-Z, under the label Rockefeller Records, could not use that name without some sort of granted affiliation by civil law. They are willing puppets selling out to the Illuminists to push rape music that gradually destroys the mental and physical moral of the listener. Rock has always been a tool, and right now the pieces fit on why this is coming about. There are others who are very conscious of what they're doing. We find people like Emperor Haile Selassie still revered by the war-torn Ethiopians of Nubia, who are clueless to the paramount role he played in subduing that once rich, fertile country. He turned their remaining resources over to the Queen, who he was in constant retinue with. You see Jamaicans jam into Rastafarian tombs with little knowledge of who Ras is. Ras is another form of Ra, Marduk, a god introduced into Nubia by Ramses II on his maddening mission to be the greatest pharaoh to bring about the conquest of the whole world. That position he never achieved. Thus he defaced the temples and shrines of Egyptian ancestors, removing the names and bodies of the previous inhabitants. Surely this was a dark man who would do anything for his personal gain. Thus he prostituted the people to the gods of the underworld more than any in his lineage. Reason 30. First, Haile Selassie was exiled from Nubia and reared as a child by Zionists. He was given the first-class education and then inserted back into Nubia, where he becomes emperor. He then proceeds to divide the land and relinquish its resources to the monarchy. He's seen here with young Queen Elizabeth, Theodore Roosevelt, and the Pope. When you see and study all this, you begin to realize why not much progress to the right direction has been made for humanity. The people are taught to idolize our revolutionaries, presidents, dictators, religious leaders, etc. are placed in front of us like carrot dangles in front of a rabbit. We want to believe that we can elect one person to handle all the troubles of the world so we can go back to our daily programs. It is decreed that until we come together and take control of our world, those in power who do not care about humanity like me and you will continue to decimate it. As long as we keep trusting them and remaining lazy and insolent to what we get to do, which is take our world in harmony, we will not feel the yoke lift. As good people, we want to believe that people like Obama could change our course, although every indicator told us he could not. This is no different than thinking Christopher Columbus discovered America when there was already entire maps conscribed before he was even spermatozoa, detailing the whole world from aerial view, and it was not flat. Reason 31. As shown on CNN, Obama has more elitists in his lineage than most presidents in U.S. history. Zionism is not a color, it is an idea that is not even Hebrew. It is safe to say that what is put directly in front of us, especially through popular media, needs our personal investigation and common sense before it can be trusted. The sheer energy of crowds envelops all who are in the midst. As hearts begin to sync up, all are in the hands of so-called world leaders in the past. Few have led in the right direction as they grope about the darkness of Kali, Yogi gathering all resources of their private groups, consuming far more than the average citizen, and ever loosening the yoke. We cannot continue to be looked at as resources rather than human beings. Taking the mainstream's word for it, it seems to always prove unintelligent. They are liars, and they will say anything to make the masses disbelieve in what we have felt for so long, which is the religion, politics, social, and economic structures are developed to hinder, not free the people, lest they raise the whole earth, which can be seen itself as a large ship, into the higher heavens. Those who have not fallen cannot ascend because it burns away all impurities. The gods need not money, it is man who needs the money, while gods divvy up what is more precious to them, the gold or the soul. With taxes taking 40%, the church taking 10%, what is one to do about the baby? The religion of Christianity has done enough on its own for anyone with a keen eye to see something may need to be questioned. Even the scripture says the proof of wisdom will be within the type of people it produces. I often say that many of those who are in church are only there because of conviction of the Lord. Whatever that statement really means, it sounds like a jail sentence. Anyone who does not see religion as simply stairs to the top will often get stuck on one level or another, thus never entering complete enlightenment and only perceiving its premature phases. Enlightenment itself comes from having a firm foundation of truth, unshakable, not able to be moved, as it is fortified in exactness. That exactness comes when the real truth of whatever faith you elect falls upon your ears. At least in that moment, you have the opportunity to really serve the God you claim to worship. You will now have the hidden doctrine of these faiths, which is generally preserved for the priests. Reason 32. When Rome merged with Egypt, they borrowed the rites of Isis, casting Jesus as Isu, as the new Horus. We are not saying this individual did not exist. In fact, he did. However, what we are questioning is the final destination of the Christian soul, which is the underworld, just like it was with the rites of Isis. Ra is the ruler of the underworld. He's better known as Amen-Ra. That's why Christian prayers are concluded with Amen. The Latin word for prayer, which is oration, indicates the power is in Orion. In 1999, a movie titled The Matrix was released and made its way to the top of the box office, churned the propaganda machine with numbers rivaling Star Wars. The City of Freedom, they gave the name Zion, a blatant Zionist propaganda, as even churches pride themselves on being called Mount Zion. Just as Bob Marley heads sway to the tunes as he sings about Zion, a city depicted as having no worries, and this is anything but true. The defeat of the mind of the masses was subtle, not by force. When the flutes, cymbals, and lyres play, the formidable human force is lulled to sleep. Reason 33. Many love the flow of Bob Marley's Rastafarian music, never once noticing the Zionist connection. When the shields of the mind are down, the enemy is sure to invade. The New Age movement now insists there is no enemy, and this is just a figment of a mental hologram. Poisonous vipers, their words are sly. We need to take back Earth or get ready to leave it entirely. What is to come cannot be escaped, This was set in motion a long time ago and does not reverse, so we must work beyond it. They say humans unlock their true abilities under the scenario of fight or flight through the adrenals. Learn to stimulate those expressions and begin to work on you. Remember, what is happening does not come from a particular race of people. It is an idea that many are aligned with and has consumed their rational senses. There were, of course, many things hinted and alluded to in the movie The Matrix itself that we now find in fact to be true on various levels. It leads one to ponder the exact design of what we are really faced with currently and in our not too distant future. What kind of force would show us in something we are supposed to find entertaining that is trapped in an Oz like mechanical netherworld where our senses and abilities are limited and our energy is harvested? It beckons one to ask, are we really in the Matrix? Can we be pulled out of the Matrix? Is there an actual code to the Matrix? This book will show you beyond the shadow of a doubt that the answer to the questions being proposed above is yes. And that is not all. This book will awaken your memory and quicken you, thus causing your DNA to reformulate, which will prove to be possible by the end of this composition. DNA itself is manipulated by the mental state, surroundings, and acquaintances of the individual subject. When these are altered for a constant period, the DNA itself alters and reformulates according to its environment. This means that once you become firm about what you know to be true, especially about your special abilities that have been dormant, the DNA will reconstruct itself to make what you believe again to be possible happen. This is one of the main secrets of creating the superhuman. You have to give it reason to activate itself. This takes consistency, and as we talked about earlier, a firm foundation grounded on truth to what reality is, not what Maya or illusion attempts to make you perceive. The value of this to your future would be of tantamount benefit, especially in the world of today where knowledge is power. You can thus remove yourself from the cubes known as the hexagon or the beehive. At one point, long ago, a jealous force recognized certain types of knowledge meant unlimited power to those in possession of it. Thus, much of the valuable knowledge was removed. All written copies were burned, although at least one copy was placed in a 5-mile library under the Vatican. In replacement, we received lies mixed with truth, which does a horrible job in the mind as we watch the masses plug about clueless, still searching for themselves because religion has fulfilled almost none of its promises. Reason 34. The elite depict the world full of worker bees trying to be something, but they are trapped in hexagonal cubes. This Platonic knowledge introduced the dark square or cube. Pythagoras introduced several methods of trapping organic spirit into matter/cubes. We will speak more on this later. We are talking about the level of foreknowledge which gives you the ability to know what will happen before it takes place. This is the time it is useful, as things must speed up. You will be able to do this without the aid of books and scholars, thus you will be placed back in the driver's seat of life, exiting the checkered cab. The issue we all individually face is that we wait to see what is going to happen next before we react. It's called reactionary. This leaves you with no preparation and little time or ability to shape the future. I say that one should confront danger and fear before they become closed in by it, instead of allowing it to greet you at the doorstep while your loved ones are inside. Run and face it so you may prevent it, or at least prolong it. This may, in fact, give those you care for the edge they will need to prepare. Again, think about the 7-year-old who will have to live at least another 10 years in this world and what they are to face in those 10 years. What kind of monsters have we left for them to battle? Supplying people with this information will at least allow you to say that you did the best you could. which is also why I write this to you before my departure. When comprising this particular work, what came across my mind, since I had long discovered the code, was to write a book that even when the reader was finished, they could continue to write their own unique personal novel of experience. Due to the fact that we are all entwined in some way or another to what we are experiencing now in the world, you will find amazing syncs in your life that all roll into why you are here. Just because few are using the collective consciousness channel does not mean it's not always broadcasting. We are always linked to it. In fact, it's more like two lovers who have fallen asleep on the phone and the lines remain open although there is no one speaking. It's time you began to unlock all mysteries and, most importantly, yourself. Often I began lengthy writings only to leave them incomplete. Pieces of those writings you will find in italics throughout the book, as they serve as tidbits of poetry to ponder. The rabbit hole is far deeper than I expected in the beginning, not to mention the fact that after you get deep in the rabbit hole, you must climb back out, which they forgot to mention. You don't want to be in any hole, trust me. When you learn the whole system, you will have so much knowledge you will not be capable of fitting it all in one book. What should be kept in mind is once you start to unlock, you will see what used to remain hidden everywhere in plain view. This also means that everything is not contained here, only a framework that is needed for you to build your own ladder out of the cube of flesh into the sphere of spirit. After that, the statement will come true that if the oceans were ink and the trees were pens, you still could not write about everything you know, in fact, to be true. With that being said, I've done my best to narrow the book down to what is of highest worth to know. It was originally meant to show how words themselves play one of the most valuable roles in your individual awakening. The latter morphed into a detailed story of our true past, present, and future. Even the elites cannot say the old language is no good anymore, so from today you will use this new language. That only happened one time in history, in the confusion of Babel, when, tracing the story of Babel or the gates of Ishtar, a far more complex story arises than the brief chapters dedicated to it in the Bible. In the ancient text, one story holds about Babel. This tower, or ziggurat, had multiple purposes, and it was connected to a gate, and the two went hand in hand. In most ancient tribes, some type of structure was built to serve as a portal of a communication between presiding god or goddess and the people. You'll find a precise geometric layout of some type of construction, whether stone, altar, pillar, temple, hollow tree, or various other portals. You will learn that the geometric structure, especially on its number of sides, has everything to do with the type of energies being invoked from what dimension, plane, expanse, or abyss they hail from. In Reason 35, you'll see a rare picture of a prehistoric London, now synchromistically called Babylondon. It seems that Atlantean art style deco is preferred. The pyramids have 4 sides because they are massive gates in the 4th and 8th dimension. These dimensions, although very different from the 3rd, are functioning and highly populated, unbeknownst to the masses. It is time to understand that multiple worlds exist already function, some far worse than we are currently in, and some in complete harmony, like utopia, but not by that word. Let's get there. Reason 35. Ancient London was more like a large Stonehenge / Atlantis. Few know this part of London's history and the ongoing attempt to restore its sacred layout. Notice the model of Atlantis as seen on the right. Later you will see this particular design can be found everywhere you find Atlantis affiliates, especially in government and parliament. What is most amazing is how the obvious goes totally unnoticed. This would mean we are out of focus and we need to actually zoom in or scale down to look at what is right in front of our face. For example, Christmas is an anagram for Mithras. Once you remove the C, Mithras Day was December 25th. Do you think it would be of value on various levels to at least investigate who this individual is? What I find is those who think an inkling about their souls want to prepare it for the afterlife. This would mean knowing as much as you can about what that involves rather than just imagining that being a servant in the afterlife would actually be a reward. This is what determines whether or not you end up in a place that will mean total freedom, or the opposite. Servants are always slaves to something. It's already obvious that our current overseers seem to be very detached from the people, so this means you must build yourself to learn of higher things. The future can only be the future for so long, and then it becomes the present. Another ploy is the fight that we get dragged into all the time with these two brother archetypes that appear in religious texts, whether it is astrological Jupiter versus Saturn, Sumerian Analu versus Anu, Egyptian Osiris versus Set, Hebraic Ishmael versus Israel, and my all-time favorite classic mind job, Cain versus Abel. This is the roots of duality. After reading hundreds of testaments, Vedras, hieroglyphs, stels, tablets, and spending months in meditation on what had been gathered in a very clear picture began to emerge. When this quest began, it was an earnest desire to find God. My ideas have never been to disprove the existence of God or other beings, only to create a clear path that I may enter in constant communion with them. There can be no benefit in falsely disproving something that would emancipate us all. In addition, I not only studied these faiths, I immersed myself in them. There can be nothing more unnerving than someone ousting a religion that they have not even studied, much less participated in. What I did also, since I was very serious about the quest, was I sought to become the highest in each faith I was deluging. So while I was a Christian, I was a pastor and a prophet. While I was a Muslim, I was also an imam and a Sufi. There can be nothing more positively life-changing than following the truth even when it goes against everything you've been taught. I believe many headlong in their religion have discovered through one book or another the true origin of their proclaimed faith. At that moment, subsequent times after, the person enters a strong duality phase. One side insists that it's wicked, one who is trying to steal their faith. This side tends to use no facts, only emotions, barraging the person with memories of past divine experiences. The other side finds constant facts to debunk what the emotional side is suggesting. It often shows that paranormal experience should not only be the gauge of determining if something is true or false, especially positive or negative. Sadly, the emotional side tends to win because the person also has gained friends in the religion, a home, or a fellowship place, and all these novelties weigh heavier on making the correct decision to disavow. As a pastor, it was hard for me to walk away from Christianity. However, since I was also infused with the spirit of truth, it was even more difficult to keep denying the obvious, which was its demoniac esoteric doctrine. Once engulfing the spiritual terrain, there is indeed a common story. It is only the names that change. We will examine this story once and for all, because it is the backbone of all belief systems, which we will call me's, pronounced maze. Belief systems and words are me's, maze. In the Sumerian text, it talks about something described as only maze. If one gains possession of the knowledge of these Mays, they can control large parts of this dimension. All authors in Sumerian religion never present a definition of what these Mays are, just that they are powerful. It is noted that the May is not a weapon. They describe various weapons that belong to the gods in the Sumerian text, but they are sure to keep the Mays separate. The only hint they give of them is that they are written on the tablets. The resonance of information that remains coded in our aura of what happened in the past existences will always serve as mental triggers for our minds. This is how stories of our past is linked to religion in order to bring about devoutness, fear, resonance, and loyalty under false pretenses. A cruel mental scheme designed around the ethereal-based historical facts. Reason 36. The Sumerians inscribed their religion on stone tablets that have survived since antiquity. All of the stories in the Torah were first Sumerian minus the name changes. The Mays were known as to be inscribed on such tablets, just as Moses was proposed to receive tablets inscribed by God, Yod-He-Vav-He, Tetragrammaton. Shem, Noah's son, also finds a secret stone with engraving from before the flood and conceals it from his brothers, later to use its magical formulas. I learned that some Mays were certain words of power encompassed by doctrine that could be incorporated around those words. The one who controlled the names could control whole nations. First, we will examine the doctrine. There are things that have happened on our planet that not even reincarnations cannot completely erase the memory of, and that is the flood. The flood is mentioned in every ancient text, although it is not said to be related to man's sin, but rather a natural phenomenon. The punishment for man's sins story did not come about until the Sumerian and Hebrew text, which mainly operated under the fear and reverence of a terrible God rather than unconditional love. This is obviously the product of guilt. The main reason for this being the leaders of these groups are always warring with surrounding countries, so love was not a good angle for them. War and vengeance and favoritism was more ideal. The occurrence of the past flood has left residue in our aura. Thus, all stories that begin with floods are entertained by the subconscious because it knows for a fact the flood is true. The details, of course, are not available. Many people have a phobia of deep water because of the last flood. The ark was another part of the subliminal entrainment of doctrines. The word itself resonates to escape something that is fearful, impending, such as the dark. It was known that you could traverse to the netherworld on a bark, which meant a special boat. There are few who made it onto the ark, and those who did were given a special mark to show that they had been saved. After the dark came the sun, which we unconsciously assume will rise every morning. The sun wakes the whole world and gets the next day started. The sun and the sun were made synonymous in English because of this. The Babylonian name meaning Sam, son of Sam, or is it Samson? The sun god's religion embed themselves in the natural occurrences of nature. There is always a mother, sometimes two, since we are in a binary system. This always leads to a good mother and one evil or surrogate mother. Eve and Lilith, the mother archetype, will always survive because the planet can never be seen as anything different than a nourishing mother. Thus, when a name for the Mother Earth was given, all would revere it as though they do their physical mother. The name was spoken as Gaia, then Maya, Maya, and then 1,000 more. Often the origin of the name was never examined. The people remained always too trusting of their rulers. The dying and resurrecting sun theme was all in a day's work. The sun died at night and resurrected in the morning. This always left the door open for a host of nighttime nightmare creatures that played the role as adversary to the sun. Thus, the devil became nights, or set, as in sunset. Still, a sun god, nonetheless, with a host of worshippers that gravitate toward darkness. Once this began, the idea of the city with an eternal light was hatched. A place that was never dark, and of course there were requirements on how to get there. Those requirements were made known by numerous prophets, shamans, seers, holy men, gurus, yogis, and various others playing the role of predictors of the time. They later became just as revered and reverenced as the God itself. Notice how in Christianity, Jesus is now worshipped more than Yahweh. Many in the church don't even know who that is, nor do they care that Jesus has it all covered. In Buddhism, there's more discussions about Buddha than the divine concept of the focal point which Buddha presented. This is no wonder, since they say his mother's name was Maya. All around the world, the same song. Various sects of Islam suffer from the same problem, revering caliphs, imams, and Muhammad more than Allah at times. The rabbis get more airtime than Ein Sof, especially since they are convinced he is incomprehensible and cannot be conceived by impure flesh. Last, but far from least, comes the chaos and destruction. Since mankind is immortal in this physical state, many assume a time will come for everything to die, thus we falsely decree to the earth's time will come also. It should be obvious now that the earth is immortal and passes through various phases. We watch it happen every day as animals die, bugs die, we age, the house or neighborhood gets run down. Decay is inevitable, however, the glass half-empty approach of modern religion, in which the whole world and most of its inhabitants must be utterly destroyed by plagues and horrors falling from the sky, distorts an act that should be otherwise looked at as an entrance to a greater phase. The truth is that these distorted belief systems proposed are one and the same. With their spiritual technologies, they have mastered how to keep the soul in stasis. True spirituality is the growth of the soul. This allows it to become quite the opponent to forces that would attempt to capture it once it escapes your body. Any shaman can tell you this. When he or she enters the spirit world, there are various things its inhabitants consider before they interact with the shaman. Many shaman have various types of protection, but their main asset is the strength of their totem. The human soul is a force to be reckoned with when it is fully in tune. This leads to other beings just leaving you alone so you can live. The doctrines of today are combined in more or less a religious buffet based on collected information gathered over time. Some systems more creative and poetic than others, although the story itself only served to captivate and implore the Nephite that its names, which are vibrations, that created the staying power. All through this work we will be examining the various names' power. Reason 37. Religion has constructed an entire ideology of afterlife that plagues the believer's mind with absurdities, giving birth to distorted forms and the imbalance of fear. When consecrated belief is put into such things, they are given the energy to materialize, and believe me, they have already. Places like Purgatory, the fields of Elysium, Hades, Abaddon, the Netherworld, and many others really exist. Remember, there are now billions of people who believe in these places, and most end up in them. The commoner is enticed to a place of worship for one reason or another. The high priest, however, must understand how it all works, especially the spiritual realm. Chanting is a major part of priestly duties beyond the ritualistic observances. What chanting does is bring the body into a frequency of whatever name is being chanted. Once the frequency match is accomplished, the portal is open. We are the fifth element, being comprised of earth flesh, water mucus, air breathe, fire blood, and the fifth, which is the divine breath likened unto fire, none can produce save the Most High. Many have tried, and reasonless abominations they continue to bring forth when practicing as doctors and magicians tend to call their art of non-perfection. One of the real reasons this is happening is the Most High has decreed all will eventually return to the source, and it does not exist in time, thus it's extremely patient. It also says it is sufficient enough to rule its creations and does not need representatives that claim to magnify, but in all actuality block the way. If a man or a woman wanders off the true path, they can easily lose focus by being divided amongst the gods, vying for power, splitting the person's energy in at least three ways, which they call the Trinity. Instead of following these gods who want sacrifices and servants all the time, I went to look for something that was not as petty and sadistic. And guess what? I found it. I'm giving it to you. When you give something good out, you get the same in return. This is what we are supposed to do, no matter what everybody else is doing. Just remember, if they don't know the code, their entire form as it exists before you is being affected in more ways than you can conceive. So you can afford to give those you have grudges against a pass. This is prehistory, however, gods abound around the globe in various lands, and they are increasing. This is because the term God is being used so loosely, you can even have people saying that they are God. I know the popular argument is God is experiencing itself through us. This is another one of those things that just sounds good and is never questioned. The Most High brought forth all experience from itself and shared it with us as a gift. There is no need for the Most High to live through us. I'm sure better things are entertainment for an all-powerful being building multiple galaxies with a spiral force than playing The Sims with its human creations. The truth is, sayings like this are fuel for the ego, which can make us think a little bit too much of ourselves while still not in constant contact with the Most High. We are living in a society where most of the things related to the paranormal and esoteric matters have been proven are still hidden from us. Imagine our maturity rate compared to freed societies. With the entities, the stronger eventually become the victor, and they are warlike gods. The Most High is not involved in such debased and petty things. This is the key to proper distinguishment. With the gods, their strength comes in numbers, and those numbers are individual souls who get caught up in the religion and die with it freshly in their mind and aura. It's time you finally get the truth so you can be what your dreams used to say you were when you were a child, traveling worlds with endless imagination, creating things in your perfect, undistorted image. I will make it clear, if it wasn't for the brain screwing by those sinister groups that administer medical drugs and procedures, cartoon candies, toys, and education to kids while they're in their most sensitive growing phases, naturally we would have a beautiful world full of joy. For those that come out ill, they would be showered with love and positive vibration. This would bring up their frequency, thus curing them. Simple. So there is someone to point a finger at, and this is exactly why the New Age movement has hatched. Because the people, once again, are rising up as the burden is getting heavy. One now has to work 2 or 3 jobs to keep things going. Not to mention their habits, and they're tired of this, and with just cause. Silently, we know this is not our fault, and when I found the code in the language, at that moment, I knew it wasn't people's faults. Before then, religion had me thinking that it was because they didn't worship the right God, so they were suffering, or it was some past karma from another life, so they were paying in this life. I would silently think, what? Can we be sure of that? Reason 38. There can be no doubt the elite are implanting the children with corrupt ideas. They propagate and insinuate war while the children is still growing. Thus it becomes more natural later in life. It is no surprise to see the dragon and skull mixed in with this poor child's cache of death-dealing plastic. This is what I came to stop. The misinterpretation of the Most High, and I give my life proudly exposing everything I can to make the world better and restore the power to the people for free. Why not? It is a noble deed. What else do we really have if we lose the earth and we don't know where our next home will be? People expect the afterlife to be some big happy festival where something invites you into a higher realm with rivers of warm honey and milk, streets of fine opaz gold, with gems and diadems running through the current of sweet water, cool to the touch, as compatible mates are all around you, basking in the warm glow of God. You can see how that can lull a person into a deeper sleep than they already are in. What is being described here is something you can have on earth. The real heaven is much, much more, only if you knew. Medical drugs are now, according to rehabilitation institutions, far worse than street drugs. This is not suggesting one should use street drugs, however. We should find it daunting that our organization formed to look after our health, actually the orchestrators of slow mental and physical arsenic death cycle. It is now known that Alzheimer's disease, the disease that makes the elderly forget their precious memories, is mainly accredited to the cocktail of drugs given them, prescribed by doctors, intentionally. These drugs contain high amounts of mercury, which melts the brain as chemical ether melts the soul away. Even the word retire tells a person to go back to sleep. Incredible. The chemicals in baby formula are mostly metals, exhausting the child's natural nutrients like enzymes, in which never develop again once they are depleted. Many of the individuals who work for the organizations that administer these things are unaware, from the sense that they have been compartmentalized in the mind. The dream of being the doctor with a white coat, sloppy handwriting, Rolex, and BMW infested the grid that we all plug into. Compartmentalization is done through language. It takes at times thousands of years to alter a language, and since words are really a vibration, the actual true meaning can never be destroyed. You can feel it through emotion. Of course, many things will be exposed and may be made known to the reader. That is riveting. I would only ask that one should not concentrate on what they do not know, but rather what they will and should know. When something is introduced that is new, it is oftentimes rejected at first. This rejection is really fear. It seems we often forget that this is how we learned everything that we know right now. This man was prescribed all these drugs over time for chronic pain. The more he would take, the more they would prescribe. Since the doctor is only interested in billing the insurance company, they don't really care. The medicines, in fact, caused the continuous pain. At first it was new, then you learned it and practiced it. And some things you even perfected. New always equals fear at first. Something like your first on-stage recital, especially if you had a speaking role. I will tell the reader now, nothing will be the same after you finish this book. It cannot be. The world itself will open for you, and you will be given back what we have unknowingly given up or lost, which is true choice. I will also say that what I offer is truth, nothing more. It is the person's own unique decision, after all, after it has been restored. Although the facts will be made clear beyond doubt, to ultimately believe and react to what surrounds you at every moment is your own individual responsibility. The system itself is comprised in a way to make the individual feel a dependency on it and a false love for it. This is what keeps an illusion solid. This becomes the key to determine whether or not you are prepared for ascension, ascent scion, during this lifetime, or whether you need to come around and loop again. So wasting no time at all, you may accompany us in a journey through the rabbit hole. Trust we know our way around, as true light does at times pass through the lower region of Hades, as a box's final residence for all foolish men, kings included. The Word. How this all came about, this thing we call the Matrix, was through a play on words. Language is the Microsoft Windows or Unix for the brain. The Bible says, "In the beginning was the Word." This did not mean the whole book, because it would have read, "In the beginning there was a book." But instead it refers to an actual word that can create things. This ability is referenced here in the first book, known as Genesis. Since we are in the image of the Creator, we can do smaller versions of the same thing depending on how well we understand the ability and how to use it. Although the need to create a new world or word is now at hand, the gap between creating multiple worlds and creating the things within worlds is vast. Thus, the original keepers of this knowledge used this ability to form many things after the first creation. We will call them secondary creations. These secondary creations were not created by the Most High, but created by the beings the Most High created. This is of value to remember how to distinguish one from the other. Through the real Kabbalah, that four-letter word and its many formulations were made known to a few men, and that gave the original man the ability to step on the level as baby creators. The word Kabbalah itself means oral resuscitation, which means that the true Kabbalah can only be given verbally due to the correct pronunciation of these words of power. It is never written. When this knowledge of such magnitude came to be known across the land, two more Kabbalahs were introduced. The first being the Abjad, the Arabic Kabbalah, and then came the Kabbalah of Canaan, or the Grimoires, of which the latter can easily be downloaded from the internet, while the former has remained hidden. Imagine how many people downloaded a copy of the most common Kabbalist grimoires when Madonna proclaimed that she was studying Kabbalah. Reason 40. Yod-He-Vav-He, known also as the Tetractys or Tetragrammaton, is the name Judaism and Christianity revere as their father. Tetra means four. Reason 41. This chart, known as the Shem-Ham-Foresh, survives from antiquity, although not very legible. You can see the name Dios on the right side of the wheel. In many Latin countries, they refer to God as Dios. However, he is but one of many names constructed in ancient Kabbalah. Many of these names are reported to be ineffable, meaning that one should never utter them verbally, but should only contemplate them in their mind. Uttering them off the mouth is said to be a sin because the flesh is impure. Such tales kept people separated from the true origin of these beings, since when uttered they are enlisted to appear at one point. However, when they arrive, one must gird themselves to deal with such strange, overwhelming forces. This particular Kabbalah, which we will call the written Kabbalah of Cain, is known through circles as Lesser Keys. This work was eventually identified as a text of dark magic responsible for uniting man with horrible things from lower dimensions. This did not stop its reproduction. Just as books like the Necronomicon, the Book of Shadows, and the 6th and 7th books of Moses are easily available, and many have become possessed reading such as Sefer Raziel, Sefer Yetzirah, and Sefer Hashmoth, which are still in mainstream production as people are subtly coerced to lend an open ear to the dangerous, degenerating art of Goetia, the evoking of departed souls and lesser jinn. Reason 42. Various Kabbalahs were formed as many descended the inverted tree of life, which can be seen here, led to heavy serpent and beast worship. It is unmistakably obvious that this has gone beyond some mere hobby for wise men. This has become an art that has corrupted minds and made men into pawns of spooks. Let us keep this in mind. If you are a powerful high vibration being and someone from Earth is summoning you, it's obvious you have no time to fool with earthlings to do their selfish bidding, which generally involves controlling people and making money. Being very different, the lower forms have something to gain by making pacts and acquaintances with humans because they are on lower dimensions, some of whom have forfeited their chance of ascending. What a loss, they have lava to drink. To sum up Kabbalah for the reader, I will give this explanation. The original oral Kabbalah consists of only one word that masters every spirit energy on this dimension. The entire body was put into formation to pronounce this word. The written Kabbalahs have been proven to a degree to teach the Magus how to control droves of elementals that can be bent to the will of the Magus. However, one should keep in mind that the use of these beings to gain advantage in everyday life rather than doing it naturally always spells trouble. It has been documented several times that these beings are very different from humans. Being lower life forms, they only have one ability, thus their name, elemental, meaning simple or base, a controller of one element. They are referred to as sylphs, undines, gnomes, and salamanders, which correspond to water, air, earth, and fire. It is known that they often play tricks on the Magus, hiding things, breaking things, which becomes a can of worms that the practitioner wishes they had never opened. Those are normal experiences. Deeper forms of this practice have led to haunting, unknown strangulations, and death, as the underworld will continue to entreat the Magus, driving him and her mad, especially in Goetia, where the departed souls drain the life force from anything alive in the vicinity when evoked, especially the Magus. Reason 43. A classic depiction of a magician who has evoked too many elementals. The art of magic itself is very real. Dark magic is dangerous and leads to encounters that can stunt the seeker's growth. Magicians have been known to also create two-part beings known as golems to do their bidding. There is now concern in certain esoteric circles in regards to golem who are said to be revolting because they are evolving and want to be free. Stories such as Solomon controlling jinn has fascinated many into believing that it is man's right to control the jinn. The attitude of seeking to master something you do not understand will always lead to trouble. There is generally no trial or error or learning curve in magic. One mistake can lead to a lifetime of problems. That one word mentioned above and its correct pronunciation was lost because of abuse, and was before then only known by the high priest, who learned it from the high priest before him. The name was said to be pronounced only once a year during ceremony. The name itself, when pronounced, responded instantly with no delay, thus the name was alive and not dead, like the many slow responding idols of the time. Although I believe the true name was removed long before then, the holy name possessed by the Hebrews was recorded as lost during the time the Romans sacked the Temple of Jerusalem. It is said in legend that the high priest was caught up by a fiery chariot into the sky just so the name could not fall into the hands of the profane. The Arabs protected their secret name so tightly that few knew the Abjad, Arab Kabbalah, even existed. The Shriners, Aleppo, and various secret societies for spiritual adepts studied under the Arabs. Reason 44. Westerners went to Arabia to learn the esoteric wisdom of the Arabs. When they returned to America, they used what they learned to gain control of the whole country. As can be seen in this rare book, they own all the things of importance, like the railroads. Even Forbes' grandfather is in this book. The written Kabbalah of Cain was purported to be the path of recovering the true name of the lesser god after you descended the tree of life like a serpent and met the pantheon of hosts, of whose names and positions could be deciphered by working through combinations and equations. It is safe to say that many became lost and possessed as they attempted to make brutes as allies. It's claimed that one could arrive at the original name through the contemplation of 72 letters and numbers has remained unverifiable. In holy languages, the letters also double for numbers. In the end, many became insane, moving the letters and numbers around and bringing forth energies untold. The art itself gave birth to what we know now as sorcery, the control key being the tetragrammaton, a four-sided cubic diamond, also known as the tetractys, made up of letters and numbers with 18 functions or ciphers. Kabbalah is a life study, so explaining more of Kabbalah here would be only confusing to the reader, but not for me, and I will tell you just as you see the word tetra, meaning 4, grams, and tons, these units of spirit energies can overwhelm the mind, and if the person is not strong, their senses leave them forever and the body becomes the host of 4 counterparts. They have named this state of insanity the Jerusalem Syndrome. Reason 45. This is the symbol of the Magus. Once he has joined with the 4 animal traits, he will no longer be the ally of normal men. He feels elated over his fellows. The deepest and darkest part of spiritual knowledge lied within the art of Goetia and necromancy. Apparently, this ancient knowledge from Sumeria even spread to the Western schools of thought, creating multiple offshoots. The Necronomicon, the Sumerian spellbook of Marduk, Ra, was the initiated doctrine of dark occults. Few initiates knew this. What I find even more interesting is Marduk had 3 main enemies. One was Tiamat. Tiamat was the old name for Earth. before Earth had its encounter with Nibiru, also called Planet X. One of its orbiting moons slammed into what is now Earth, but was then Tiamat. This indicates even more that a war took place in the past involving these invaders who had some issue with the planet we now call Earth. Even known powerful adepts like Eliphaz Levi, who many believe along with himself was the thrice-born Hermes Thoth, in his last incarnation advised to stay away from Geotia. And this comes from a man who practiced all forms of dark magic. He purported that this was the worst and had extreme negative results that were far-reaching, extending into the spirit planes of past and future. Reason 46. This is the seal of the Necronomicon of Marduk, the sworn enemy of man. If you see it, head the other way. Necromancers are lower life forms looking to gain energy. They are distorted and not fully developed, thus they know not what they do, and have no guidance save their dark lord, who is blind in one eye. We shall use his body to stir the lake of fire. The sigil is a series of imperfect pentagrams meaning flawed. Necromancy as a game entered the U.S. through Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley, who were Illuminists themselves. First it came as the Ouija board, and then the game Seance. Once the organic portals, humans that sometimes have unknowingly formed pacts with spirits per game instructions, were open, it became something of a greater proportion. This was the knowledge of the ghost world, which was populated with lost, dismembered souls looking for answers, and various other two-dimensional spirits. These were those who had spent life in vain and thought death was the end. Many warners we sent to them, and they rejected them. As you notice in Christianity, they speak of the gospel, ghost spell, and entreat the Holy Ghost. What business does the church have with these ghosts? Someone call the Ghostbusters. Again, the only one really responsible is the individual person. There is definitely a point of no return, and that point is reached at times within the first ceremony. If you could see the spirit world, which some already can, you will see that there are many watching and waiting for their opportunity to weave their way into your world. These days, many have already let them in. Look around your whole habitation and see how much evil is resident manifested in the form of skulls, guns, horror, harsh music, and killing games. All this carries energy, and at a certain point, it can overwhelm your atmosphere unknowingly if you don't keep balance. Why do you think media is stored on a magnetic disc? What do you think happens when these discs are stacked or even spun at high rates of speed? Negative magnetic information generates and emits a field of binary aura that fills large areas. Reason 47. Most never question why these games entered the US, who brought them there, and for what purpose. This dark art was made to look like fun, and was everything but that. All the tools were in the box to open a portal to the lower dimension, or your money back. Looking deeper, we find an ancient text explaining the final termination of the first round of early Earth gods that ruled mortals through oracles and pagan practices. Along with the captured gods, more than 8 million warring angels were carried all together to Makavishtu in hand. The Most High says, "We cast them into the unquenchable fire where there was already more than 10 million who were in chaos and madness." For a while the earth was clear of the gods, whose chief labor had been for thousands of years to capture the spirits of the recently dead and make slaves of them for the glory of the lesser kingdoms. Their end was swift, just as one rises and falls in power. However, the cursed magicians invited them back into this realm once more, and the people, ever lacking in reason, welcomed them back by their abhorred actions and impurities to no extent. Some of these beings are further along the evolutionary cycle than we are. Thus, they appear as gods to the primitive. The art of deifying or creating gods was perfected in Egypt. They discovered upon death that if a person knew the secrets of the soul, they would become like gods to the mortals, living on the dimensions below them. This feat involved forever relinquishing the chance to ascend, which, believe it or not, many have accepted. The gravity of descension at a certain level is too strong to turn around. Notice grave and gravity are almost the same word, not to mention you go 6 feet down in an 8-sided box. The dimensional transport ritual still stands today in the Western world. If you notice in the Arab countries, the dead are buried immediately in a white sheet, no box, and facing to the east. Reason 8. The Saturnalian ritual of the 8-sided rectangular box ensured the departed soul was transported to their dimension or sealed. It exists today without the slightest notice, as people are unknowingly being boxed up and transported. As the scripture says, the day the dead will come out of their grave, because many are trapped there. We should ascend the moment we are released from the body. However, the disposal of our shell must be back in the dirt. From dust the body goes, so must it return. The God-making business set some men up to become lords of the underworld and its grotesque inhabitants. Egypt was first known as Chem, the descendants of the lost Atlantis, then Ogygia in esoteric circles, a name long forgotten. Also called Scythian by the mystics, where we get our English word city. Then Egypt by the commoner. Much later it was found out that the word Genesis actually was formulated from the words genes of Isis or generation of Isis. None of these are Hebrew terms. Even the word Bible comes from the word biblios, which is the place Isis set up to worship and mourn Osiris. Likewise, Ishtar did the same with Adonis long before the Holy Bible and King James ever thought of. The Hebrews now refer to their god as Adonai. This is Adonis. Decoding the Bible, you will find that all the prophecies are occurring exactly as they have been foretold. This is because millions of people believe the prophecies of the book will come true due to their religious preference. Thus, they are actually happen because we manifest what we think collectively out of thin air. I, for one, know that prophecies are for profit, and that will become more evident later. Many have attempted to authenticate when the books of the Bible were written. After many investigations, it was at least safe to say that many of the books were written long after the actual events took place. Thus, the details are solely dependent upon at least second-hand information, which is always partial to who is telling the story. I once read an ancient manuscript of a meeting that took place between kings and emperors in regards to powerful languages. Being a person that sought to model myself after wise men, I was curious of why there was such an emphasis put on formation of languages. I soon discovered that ancient codes and directs the mind and this was known at least since the time of ancient Arabs, although evidence proves way before then. According to the Bible, at the Tower of Babel, man faces a confusion of languages by the God. And that is the word used, confusion. A few chapters later, the same God remarks, he is not the author of confusion. Huh? What is this all about? This made for quite a puzzle for me that made no sense. Reason 49. The dragon hath horns of a stag, head of a camel, eyes of a demon, neck of a snake, belly of a clam, scales of a carp, claws of an eagle, soles of a tiger, ears of a cow. By these symbols, you will know them. Parts of the puzzle we will unravel slowly so nothing is missed. The Ishtar Gate is one of the most controversial relics known to man. Just as the pyramids are gates, the Gate of Ishtar, also known as the Gates of Elu, were first located in Ur. This was the first gate ever constructed to open the portal of Inanna, Ishtar, Ashtoreth, Astarte, Asherah, Venus, a channel to androgynous vampiric serpents, and various other life forms that hang out in Club Shemham Foresh. She is Inanna, consort of Marduk, Ra, also called She-Ra and Rat, connected to the seven sisters of the Pleiades and their protector, dog Hades, Anubis. They are Ma, Maya, Mayat, Mag, and Mary, who give the power to Magus. With them is the serpent Sor, who is the source of sorcerer's power of Hathor. This is the dragon, its first depiction, then called Susa, our abbreviation, USA, Land of Serpents, who guard the Sedona time portal to Siam. Their art is seduction, which brings out delusion and seduction. When approached by these beings, one feels a pressure around the anus. They are androgynes, thus they masquerade as female and male. This is God S, Dragon Queen or Drag Queen. They falsely illuminate men to the wisdom of the serpent, thus eliminating them from the great race. This is the gate of Elu. Many men have made Ishtar their consort and then have been betrayed, such as Sumerian Gilgamesh and Solomon. As the scripture says, Solomon went after Ashtoreth and sacrificed in the groves, and the high priest, after his wisdom, was not. This is the Bacchanalia, temple prostitutes, the cult of Yoni. They have connected with many of the daughters of the gods known as Fates, Furts, nymphs such as Morganus, Medusa the Gorgon, Persephone, Europa, Nemesis, Sothis or Sirius, Sekhmet, Saba, Sophia, Nephis, Nut, Kaddish. They have legions with them. They are succubi, draining vigor from their captors. Many of the overambitious, power-hungered fool has wandered down the path of false illumination, and few have returned. In ancient times, these men would war against each other to find favor with Ishtar, then erect a high place in her name to serve as a gate or a portal. This is the key to know, because you see them everywhere. Reason 50. The gates of Ishtar, the main reason we went to Baghdad above the oil. Whoever controls the main gate controls all subsequent gates. Those on the ground in Baghdad said the first thing they went for was the museum with a team of individuals that looked like they stepped out of a James Bond film. They were definitely looking for something, some type of artifact or relic. Another use of ziggurats, like the Tower of Babel seen in Reason 10, were the arks, in which several were constructed through various times to escape floods. People of the time seem to always have foreknowledge of these floods, whether this was through the adepts or by records left by previous civilizations. As said before, the ziggurats have various uses. Our current world leaders have all the information in regards to not only future floods, but also which land masses will submerge as the world adjusts to the shift. They will give none of this information to the common people, and it seldom leaks out. Instead, they continue to extend the underground caverns for themselves, building space cities, terraforming other planets, securing their future. The new Tower of Babel in Dubai Marduk Ra finally accomplished what he set out to do, which was to build the tallest building in the world. Through ancient geology, we learn that many of the regions are now deserts, where actually oceans before, and you're looking at the sandy bottom of them. Reason 51. Many indigenous tribes left several warnings about the Earth's flood cycles. They also had higher consciousness to astral travel to places before these things occurred. The elite are expanding their underground domain with the preparation of future cataclysms. These machines burrow 3 miles per day and pave the wall behind them at the same time. Inner Earth cities are beautiful. Reason 52. The new Tower of Babel, the tallest building in the world, built by the construction company Wafi, which means one is loyal to the pharaoh. That pharaoh is Ramses, who was the earthly vessel for Ra. Keep in mind these spirit energies are immortal and they incarnate into willing vessels who are connected by bloodline. In the last Olympics, the Chinese government showed their alignment with the plan of the New World Order as they danced around the tower. This is why many of the Chinese people protested, unfortunately, to no avail. What the world leaders have done, however, is revealed their true identity. This is priceless for the guided, truly only a big answer in a world full of questions. Language allows us to communicate and express ourselves, embedding itself into the framework of our mind or mental matrix. When the words we use are manipulated by the developer of the language, it is possible for us to think and feel like we are saying one thing, but in all actuality we are saying another thing. But in all actuality we are saying another, which would change the outcome of our intended desire. The most damaging thing about languages of today is they are not only backwards, as the word indicates, but they are also heavily laden with the names of various deities from our past fetish with pantheism. It is now evident that many of the words with certain vibrations pull energy while others restore energy. This was shown through water crystals. Our body, being 70% water, is extremely sensitive to vibration. Thought is also vibration, and this is how thought forms are created and given life. It is apparent that in the history of man and woman, there has been lots of meddling with negative energies, which can be seen within our warlike nature and bloodthirsty history. The development of weapons began the downward spiral. This art was blamed on fallen angel Tubal-Cain, the Kenite goat god, who in legend taught man how to fashion the first sword from a plowshare. From that point, man looked for anything to make a better weapon to pummel and plunder his brother. The discovery of gunpowder and various other explosives by alchemists produced a fatal time of misuse of energy that continues more now than ever. It is also morphed into genetics. Everything is alive, so imagine what radiation's character is. Our kind have been fascinated with force, not energy and ability, which is entirely different. It can be looked at this way. Some things are passive, like steel. We can fashion into a plow, till the soil, bring abundant food, or we can make it into a gun. This is my definition of passive energy. When you have things like mercury and radiation that have no nurturing assimilations for human beings, they are what I call force. Their use is generally to deteriorate anything they come in contact with. When asking about various fuels, that are used for food for different energies and spirits, I learned that first it was plasma the lower vibration beings fed on. The wars were fought with swords, and the blood was up to the bridle. Many ancient accounts note that the battlefield, when war was finished, would glow with an eerie light, and you could see gaseous life forms absorbing the energy of the blood. In time, radiation, the nastier the element, the more degraded the host that feed upon it. It is the wisdom taught by S. Now you see they are using depleted uranium, and you should know enough by now to get the clue where the hosts that feed on that energy come from. Our history also shows that many have had a fondness for worshiping and serving rather than mastering and leading. True spirituality benefits the one who is able to enact such rare talent as communication with the Most High. What remains is religion, which for the most part borrows from everywhere orthodox faiths, and tales of villains and heroes may have sprang up. Where most people get lost is being able to imagine this unseen world is real. The world we live in now is very populated with other forms of life. In history, these beings were given names in which many people, especially those that speak languages of the Latin Vulgate, evoke every day. As the wise men always knew, behind your words lies a certain force depending on how serious you take it. If you only speak idly, there are those who take that as an opportunity to release you of your power and use it at their advantage. They understand how it works. Of course, the biggest move is to detach you from belief that such things could be possible. The names used for these entities have survived without the slightest bit of notice by the average person, until now. The one that controls the tongue is on the path to controlling their thought, and not before then. Reading a book from the 1800s in regards to making spiritual contact will shine light on just how lost and off track many have been. This book proposed that you must wait for the new moon, burn some wheat, make sure you face the west, wait for a certain star to appear, look up to the heavens, and say this prayer while gripping firmly the throat of a frog. The prayer itself, the combination of holy names, some I recognized to be in direct conflict with each other. I thought to myself then, surely if one must do all this to contact the Most High, then maybe we are lost. Of course, one does not have to do all of what was described to make contact, but let us not believe someone has not tried this recipe of foolishness and reaped the results. In addition, when the unseen negative forces perceive that one will go to extremely barbaric lengths to make contact, they normally lead the person into a whole host of rituals which tend to involve sacrifice and blood. Thus they never meet the Most High and are headed in the direction of a place foreign to anything made of flesh, with no light to guide their steps. We are now living in a time that is almost necessary for the religious system to reboot due to the amount of legends, myths, and fables that have been all rolled up under the subject of spiritual ascension. This book, to me, was the final effort to get a rope around all the belief systems as they continue to merge, becoming more and more difficult to weed through and track the origins of. I'm sure that if something was not done now, future generations would have a difficult time telling truth from falsehood if this is allowed to continue. This book is a key underground tool for understanding what happens in the near future and getting through it. History books continue to be revised as more incorrect information is added. If you notice the Mind Hive framework. Wikipedia, now #1 portal for information, constantly updates their data, and they are owned and operated by the elite. I've witnessed various alternations to certain subjects which take a person completely off the mark of truth of the topics of high importance. Once we move further, I will state again that I'm not at all in the advocate of Christianity, but it is now a fact that Catholic and Christian religions have restarted a much older design and have introduced it into the world under new packaging. Some addition name changes and the sprinkle of hyperdimensional magic is all that's needed to mislead the masses. This makes it of value to dissect certain things that we know about religion in order to fully perceive what is really going on today. You should keep in mind that the amount of followers dedicated to each belief system, thus the direction of energy, how it flows about the world you currently live in. Although you may have opened your mind to research for whether or not there is no truth out there, many refuse to read anything related to the subject of spirituality. Another portion will not read anything else unless it is the Bible, Quran, or the particular book of their faith, such as the Book of Mormon. In fact, these religions teach that one should not read anything else lest they become led astray, or should they say, led to the real truth. One is looked at as a devil when asking too many questions, and they are often rebuked. There are others who get lost in the complex disinformation produced in the works such as Liber 777 and various other novels that claim to be references on the meaning of esoteric knowledge and its symbols, etc. Besides avoiding fall asleep while reading these tales, one is sure to get a feeling they are following someone who has no eyes, guide dog, or cane. They bring about a whole new meaning to lost. That, of course, is for the confused wishing to be witches. The illumined knows things entirely different. It is nothing like exhausting sagas and ceremonies of the witches. Direct and constant contact is necessary, and thus I will reveal how it is accomplished. The 8-pointed star is that of Ilu. To the Illuminati, this also signifies all 8-legged insects, such as spiders who weave webs. At the entrance of the Bohemian Grove, where rituals take place, it says, "Spiders, weave not your webs here," indicating they cannot use magic on brothers. However, the masses they prey on. The star is also used in their evocation and transportation to Venus and various other locations.